Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We're here. We made it. It's Friday. Carlene, we made it. It's Friday. Yes. It has been a busy week. It's been a busy Friday morning. A lot that we covered over 2 hours from the 9 to 11 stream. And we don't want to waste any time because they're still busy this afternoon. And just moments ago, we were able to get a up close look at the newest Carolina Panthers. The NFL draft was last night. Panthers picked at 8. There were a lot of questions. Who would the Panthers pick, or would they trade back? They decided to stay there at 8, and they took Tetairoa McMillan, also known as T-Mac, from Arizona, the 6'4", 219-pound wide receiver, a Bryce Young fan. Yeah, Bryce Young is a fan of this guy. I saw the video before or after the Panthers drafted McMillan, and they got Bryce's reaction on the phone, and Bryce is excited about this big target. He is a big play guy. I think he would be a great pairing with a guy like Xavier Legette, and also you have the veteran Adam Thielen coming back with the Panthers, who can fit into the slot. Also, he can play outside as well. But yeah, we caught up. We were able to be there at Bank of America Stadium just moments ago. This just happened, so we wanted to, rewind and play back that moment. Are we ready for that moment?
I'm ready for that moment.
All right. So here's that moment. And so you see there, I always wanted to do. That's pretty. It's so cool. I love. This was like one of my favorite things. It's like seeing that drum, and that usually is you get the, I guess, special guest for the game to beat the drum.
Mm-hmm.
And so look. Is he gonna hit it again? Okay, dramatic pause.
Dramatic.
Oh, okay, yeah. No,
He's hyping up the crowd.
there goes Sir Purr. One more time. Oh.
Oh no, he's got it.
Oh man, he's gonna be a good fit here.
Crowd pleaser.
Yeah, I like that. Those guys with energy. Bryce is more the chill guy, more the reserved. It looks like T-Mac is more of the crowd guy.
Crowd pleaser.
Yeah, crowd pleaser. Hypes up the crowd. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this guy. He's a big target, 6'4", 219. Came as a little bit of a surprise for some Panthers fans. Not in a bad way. I want to preference. It wasn't a bad way. It's just what we were hearing and what we were being told. It suggested that we were going to take a defensive
You suggested
lineman.
earlier, could that have been a part of the plan?
It could. Yeah, I fully think that they had two guys that they really like: Mason Graham out of Michigan, and then T-Mac, Tetairoa McMillan, and so. Mason Graham went to the Browns, and so they went to T-Mac. I think they really like T-Mac. I think Bryce Young was a big influence, and you hear it from the press conferences, and T-Mac even said it during his introductory press conference. Not really his introductory press conference, but his press conference right after he got drafted, because he's about to have his introductory press conference with the Panthers. But the press conference he had right after he got drafted, he basically said, without in so many words, that, hey, look, Bryce Young, great player. I would love to play for him. We worked out together. It was a big influence. So, yeah, I'm glad to have him in town. God, I'm trying to think. Outside of Xavier Legette, the last big wide receiver that we picked.
You got to tell me.
It would probably be Kelvin Benjamin, but I don't. It would be Kelvin Benjamin from the 2014 draft. Yes, the 2014 draft. But I mean, and he was fresh off a national championship, but he wasn't really like a big play wide receiver. He was a big body. He could good hands coming out of college, but he wasn't like a big play wide receiver like T-Mac. Two different wide receivers. But again, T-Mac is in town. We're going to try to get you to that press conference a little bit later. A little bit later. So there you go. Panthers there's a new Panther in town. So I'm excited as a fan. I'm excited as a fan. All right. So I guess now, do we want to get to New York? Do we want to show? Okay.
I think this is Santos just entering the vehicle. I'm just going to put this live shot up.
Yeah. There was a press conference of some sort that just wrapped up. But I do want.
It looked like Santos just walked in that vehicle. I think the cameras are trying to follow him walking out.
Yeah, former U.S. Representative George Santos was sentenced in his federal fraud case. He is just leaving in that car. It looks like he just got into that car and he's speeding away. The New York Republican admitted to engaging in campaign finance scheme, wrongly receiving unemployment benefits during the COVID-19 pandemic, and lying on House financial form. Santos agreed to restitution and forfeiture totaling nearly $580,000 as a part of his guilty plea. Sentenced to 87 months in, again, this New York federal fraud case. You saw Santos pull off with his team. There was a press conference that happened here live earlier.
You have anything to say?
Okay, this is video from when he arrived in court. Again, you can see Santos entering the courtroom. Again, I want to bring this to you, the newest information that we have. Former Representative George Santos sentenced to 87 months in New York federal fraud case. Former U.S. Representative George Santos, again, sentenced in that federal fraud case. The New York Republican admitted to engaging in a campaign finance scheme, wrongly receiving unemployment benefits during the COVID-19 pandemic, and lying on House financial forms. Santos agreed to restitution, more than $500,000 as part of his guilty plea. Again, this is a look from earlier, him entering the courthouse, and we just saw live him leaving the courthouse. Do we have something live?
It appears that more people are going to come speak at the podium.
Okay.
So we can go there and check it out.
Yeah, let's go there live. Let's take a listen in.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go inside. I'll go inside and bring them out. Are you all ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go in and bring them out.
Told them not to book an Alexa. They're gonna get slapped.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right now, it looks like we're awaiting some sort of press conference after the fallout of former Representative George Santos being sentenced to 87 months in a New York federal fraud case. We saw him earlier live here, leaving the courthouse, hopping into a car with his team, and then quickly leaving. And we played video earlier of him walking into the courthouse, shaking hands, cameras surrounding him. Yeah, here's that video. You see him shaking some hands, reporters asking him questions, cameras all around him. Again, sentenced to 87 months in New York federal fraud case. The New York Republican admitted to engaging in a campaign finance scheme, wrongly receiving unemployment benefits during the COVID-19 pandemic, and lying on House financial forms. Again, we are awaiting some sort of press conference there. Again, this is a story that is developing, and this is a shot in a video from earlier on that. All right, so okay, we're going to step away from that for a second. We should get to a big story that we're following, story that Miles Harris is following. I'll set this up for us. So this morning we got video, very disturbing video. We're not going to play the video. We're not going to show any images because it is very disturbing. This is a video that is making its rounds across social media. Video showing a possum being set on fire. Now this has sparked a lot of reaction. We have received emails, phone calls about this. Our Miles Harris is digging into this story. He spoke with North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission about this incident just moments before we hopped on this afternoon stream. Let's listen into that interview.
So we're talking today specifically on a video that's kind of circulating on social media in regards to some animal cruelty, specifically talking about a possum. Now, I'm assuming that you've been able to, unfortunately, get a chance to see this video, but when you first get a chance to see this video, what kind of is one of the first things that kind of triggers in your mind for starters?
Just the act of animal cruelty, comes to mind, and how it's unfair to the animal.
When we talk about the severity of this case, kind of break down where this case kind of sits in your guys' lap right now.
Yeah, so there's a misdemeanor level of animal cruelty and there's felony levels of animal cruelty. And right now it's under investigation, but this is looking like it's going to be a felony matter of animal cruelty.
As far as any updates in this investigation, have you guys been able to, or can you at least share with us if you guys have found anybody responsible for this case, or where are you guys at with that so far?
It's still under investigation, waiting to make contact.
I mean, we're obviously here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Do you guys ever see cases like this frequently?
It seems like nothing to this level within the past few years since I've been working, but it does seem like every once in a while we'll have some cases of animal cruelty within the area.
Talk to me a little bit about just kind of the importance of getting this around as far as an educational standpoint when it comes to the community and knowing exactly what parameters stand when it comes to animal cruelty in a case like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is kind of a unique case, being that it's a wild animal, but this can be applied to domestic animals. It can apply to wild animals. So I would, encourage folks to, if they're not, as far as their pets, if they're not, giving them food, water, that kind of stuff, it can be considered animal cruelty. Any type of hitting, beating, killing maliciously is going to qualify, whether it's a wild animal or not.
Now, Christopher, one of the things I wanted to ask you though too is, like you mentioned, I mean, we don't know if this was a possum that belonged to these people or whether there was a wildlife in this case though too. But let's say, regardless of the case, what is the best way or the proper channels for people to handle whether it is a wildlife animal that they don't own? What's the proper ways of handling those?
Yeah, so on that matter, without a proper permit, a person can't have a wild animal as a pet. So without a certain permit that's through us, these folks wouldn't be able to have a possum as a pet. So we try to keep our wild animals wild because it's better for them and it's better for us, as far as diseases and everything. But, in our area where there's just a lot of population, a lot of folks, we're going to have encounters with wild animals, whether it be raccoons, possums, squirrels, anything of that matter. If you have questions, if you're having certain problems, you can always give us a call. We have biologists that can help deter those animals without, the lethal part of it. And sometimes you may have to get a permit for depredation.
One of my last questions that I have you with this case now being looped in the video making its way online, do federal authorities, are they looped in on this case right now as well? What you mentioning, it's also now looking like it could be a felony charge.
I'm not sure as far as federal agencies at this point.
Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Christopher?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Hey, man, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me on this matter.
And that was Miles's interview, again, moments before we hopped on the stream regarding a very disturbing video. We got emails, we got calls about it. We're digging into this story. Miles spoke with NC Wildlife Resource Commission, and we wanted to bring in Vanessa Rufus with this story. Vanessa, that's a tough watch. Just to be transparent, I maybe watched a little bit of it. I couldn't get through the video. I mean, it's just.
We chose not to.
Yeah, we didn't even want to show it or even any sort of screenshot or images. What do you know so far? I know Miles asked them about federal charges. What are you hearing so far?
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, based on the community outreach, folks have been contacting our newsroom and also authorities. From what I understand, there are multiple agencies that are aware of this video and are looking into it. So of course, Miles, we heard that chat with wildlife officials. It sounds like CMPD is aware of this based on what I've heard from the Animal Care and Control Bureau of CMPD. And we actually just got a response a few moments ago from a representative with the FBI who said that she is looking into this case. So it sounds like FBI at the very least is aware that the situation has happened and is looking into whatever role it might have, if any, in this case. And the reason why we did bring in, the questioning about the federal level is there is actually a law that was passed back in 2010. Congress passed this law, and the name of it is kind of weird, and I can explain a little bit more about why the name of the law is like this, but it's the Animal Crush Video Prevention Act. And basically, it allows federal authorities to step in and levy charges and punishments in cases where there are animal torture videos that are posted online or on social media, whatnot. With essentially, once you put things online, things can cross state lines, if you will.
Okay.
And then that's the potential there for the federal, the federal authorities stepping in. Like I said, the name of the policy is kind of sad when you think about it, but it basically alludes to the fact that whether we like to think about this or not, there is a dark web, if you will. There is a web, a haven on the internet for people who dabble and, enjoy depraved, horrific things. And I mean, we're not just talking about animals, of course, we talk about child exploitation on a regular basis here and what authorities have been doing as of late to try to curb that. But I mean, there is, sadly to think here, a market online for people who are interested in videos of animals being tortured. So the name Animal Crush Video Prevention Act comes from the fact that there are videos out there of people crushing animals, burning animals, torturing animals, killing them. And so that's why this law was created, because authorities saw that there was a concern there with that.
And when I think of the dark web, I think of like some, hidden website, secret website. This was on, I'm not even going to name the social media site, but this was on social media. It was like very public. Like, I was just surprised by how bold this was to put this on a social media site.
Yeah, and I mean, it's shocking to us, but it highlights something that, this is not a secret. I've shared this before. I volunteer with Animal Care and Control, and I'm a foster mom of dogs, and our household is pretty well entrenched in the animal welfare realm, if you will. So just with our few years of being exposed to animal care and animal welfare, you become very aware of the darker side of things out there. When you start to see, for example, the conditions of some animals that might be coming into the shelter here in Charlotte, and initially you're shocked and appalled, and you're like, I can't believe someone would bring in a dog that's doused in gasoline and covered in burns. Why would someone do that to an animal? But you see it on a regular basis, and then it just becomes apparent that, whether we like to think about it or not, there's an element out there. Just as, I mentioned, there are people out there who prey on children. And I mean, these are all things that, we hate to even think about, but it's happening. And, this is something that authorities, should be and are dealing with. And obviously we have policies in place. We talked about the law, where lawmakers are aware that this is a thing and are trying to curb it with legislation.
Have you got a chance? I know you're very entrenched in the as far as advocacy, as far as with animals. Have you got a chance to speak with advocates, friends in that community? Yeah,
and we'll point out, of course, Miles Harris is doing a lot of digging specifically on this case. So he's actually going to go speak with. There's a group here that specifically deals with rehab of wild animals, although I won't say they're strictly wild animals, but they deal with a lot of possum rehab. And so the woman who runs that conservation center, she texted me today, and Miles is on his way actually to go interview her, so we'll have more of that perspective in his piece later tonight. But she's like, this is appalling. And I'll be frank, like, we started to get messages from the public to our newsroom. I want to say late last night was when I started to see the chatter on our newsroom threads about this. And this morning when I woke up, there were already messages from folks I know who are in the animal, welfare realm here in Charlotte who are reacting to this. And, we talked about the fact about how all the messages are overwhelming. I mean, I basically have been telling my contacts to let people know that we know about this, we're covering it, police know about it, they're looking into it, just because there's so much of an inflow of interest in this case and people who are horrified that this happened.
And we're journalists, our job is to report the truth and the facts, but it doesn't make it any less disturbing. It doesn't make it any less whatever you want to say about it. Yeah, it's just, that is very difficult to watch, very difficult to see. Even you just recounting your work that you do, like, that's just difficult to hear, like somebody dousing an animal in gasoline, like.
Well, I'll mention this too, because of that work, that I've done, on the side as a volunteer, it's definitely informed some of my reporting here, just because, as a journalist, I see that happening, in my personal life, seeing the consequences of those animals coming into the shelter, and I'm going, I don't think a lot of people know that this is going on. I mean, we report on these cases every now and again, so, I mean, I feel like I've definitely, been interested in some of the policies surrounding animals and what does the public know, what should the public know a little bit more about. And I did want to point out, just because sadly this is a timely special that we have, but on WCNC Plus, our team put together this 1-hour special on Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Month, which is this month, it's April. And one of the things we talk about is the link between violence against animals and violence against people. And I was very stunned to kind of learn some of the statistics as we were doing research on this project, which, by the way, we'll let you know, you can actually stream that on demand here on WCNC Plus. So if folks at any point, whenever they feel like they have an hour, if they want to do it bite-sized pieces of a few minutes at a time, they can go to the shows tab on WCNC Plus and they'll find it under the in-depth section. But the FBI, I mean, there's a reason why the FBI tracks these cases, and you think, oh, it's just animal cruelty, but there is such a strong link between someone who's willing to harm an animal and someone who's willing to harm another human being. And we think about, people get captivated by these, murder mysteries and serial killer, stories. And in some of these cases, we do see the person has started off by harming animals. And the FBI has come to the point where it's such an established relationship that they know they have to track these folks because of, the high risk factor that there could be violence against another human being. And not even that, I mean, this is a statistic that sits in my mind from doing research for the special. Animal cruelty is actually a better predictor of whether someone is going to sexually abuse a child.
Really?
Then let's just say if the person has a background of like a prior murder conviction or a prior gun charge conviction. It's actually, there's a high link for whatever reason between animal cruelty and sexual abuse of children.
Wow.
I know, it blows my mind.
It's a lot to,
I know. And it's sad. It's sad to think about, the most vulnerable people in our population.
But it's important work that you're doing. Make sure that check out that special is available right now on WCNC Plus.
Yeah, on demand.
On
I do
demand.
have a question.
Oh
if
yeah,
you
go
don't
ahead.
mind me
Go ahead.
asking. So I know you've worked in this sphere for years now at this point. If someone sees a neighbor or somebody that's acting badly towards animals, but maybe is there a way they can report anonymously?
Absolutely.
Is there resources? Can you go into some of that?
Yeah, and there are a lot of different outlets that you can go about depending on what you're seeing.
Yeah.
But I'll say the bottom line is to initially contact your local police department or sheriff's department, whatever your jurisdiction is to start there. Now, that said, we've dipped into this concept of, dog fighting a few times now here on Live Impact News, since South Carolina just had that big bust, 150 dogs seized in a multi-county bust earlier this month. Dogfighting is such a priority now in South Carolina that SLED has a whole task force dedicated to it, and they actually have a tip hotline. And I think I put it on our web story, by the way, about the dog bust that just happened this month, but I believe it's tips@sled.gov or something like that. But the actual email address is on that web story if folks want to go to WCNC.com and just basically search South Carolina dogfighting bust.
Okay.
And look for that article. I would also recommend folks check out either ASPCA or it used to be called the U.S. Humane Society, but its name recently changed to Humane World for Animals. And some of these groups actually have tip lines and even offer rewards for people who report cruelty against animals. And specifically, a lot of this is tailored towards dogfighting, but primarily, like, your first route of action would probably be to go to police first off.
Oh, this is good to know. Oh, wow. Yeah, a lot to take in. But again, this is important information. As you mentioned, Vanessa, this stuff, it happens. If we want to turn a blind eye to it or not, it happens, right? So check out that special right now on demand on WCNC Plus. Miles' story continues to develop. He's continuing to dig into this case. He'll have more with us. I believe he's joining you later, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's on his way right now to the conservation center that deals with possums that are injured and need to be rehabbed. So after he wraps up that and gathers, that part of his story, we'll have him back here on Live Impact News just to talk about what he's learned as he's done these interviews.
And you can catch Vanessa on the stream, Live Impact News, starting at 2 o'clock. Vanessa, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, we're going to reset for a moment. We're approaching the top of the hour. We want to get into weather, Carlene?
We're actually going back to New York.
New York. Oh, we have the press conference. Okay, so we brought you this live minutes ago, and this is, or actually at the top of the show, near the top of the show, former Representative George Santos sentenced to 87 months in a New York federal fraud case. A press conference regarding this fallout is happening right now in New York outside of a courthouse. Let's take a listen in.
What he truly was, an opportunist and a fraud. And come July 25th, George Santos will finally be where he belongs, behind bars, answering for these crimes. George Santos was the polar opposite of what a public servant should be. He is without integrity, unconcerned with his constituents, and self-interested in every way. Designer clothes were more important to him than following the rule of law. Luxury more important to him than the oath he took to serve his country and the people who elected him. He had a responsibility to those people. They counted on him to deliver for them. Instead, they got an empty man in an empty designer suit, financed by fraud. A man who to this day is not truly remorseful for his actions. A man who failed the people of Nassau County, the people who trusted and relied on him. When I announced that I wanted to begin an investigation into George Santos, the Eastern District U.S. Attorney approached me and said they would like to work this investigation together. And we did. And it's that partnership that led us to today. The prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the investigators at the FBI and in my office, and the IRS did tremendous work to ensure that George Santos was held accountable for all his lies. Together, we will continue that important work, rooting out public corruption, protecting our communities, and upholding the standard of integrity we expect our elected officials to meet. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All of you have said that you're going to continue these public corruption investigations.
Thank you, everybody.
May I ask, haven't the IRS and the FBI officers been basically just...
Will Santos have to serve all 87 months? Will he have to serve all 87 months?
There's no parole in the federal system, so they end up serving about 85% of that with credit for good time.
So it would be 85%?
About 85%. Credit for good time. There's no parole.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. News conference just wrapped up following the sentencing of former Representative George Santos. He's sentenced to 87 months in New York federal fraud case. Okay, so we want to come back home. This is a look right now at Caramount Health Park, where it is opening night, opening day, however you want to describe it. I said night because the game is at 7.
It's opening weekend.
It's opening weekend. Gastonia Ghost Peppers, first name with the name Ghost Peppers. They are hosting York Revolution tonight, tomorrow night, and then Sunday afternoon. So you have plenty of
Then you
opportunity.
mentioned the Rockers are coming.
The Rockers. I was gonna give them a pass, but I gotta let my home team. I gotta let you know about my home team. You know, I'm a high.
You gotta shout out.
High Point kid.
I don't think a stream goes by that you don't remind people you're from High Point.
I'm proud
and
of my
I say
city.
that I say that with the most love in the world because I love my hometown.
I love my hometown. High Point, baby. High Point Rockers. They're coming in town April 28th. So that's Monday, Tuesday. They'll be here the following Friday. Look, they'll be here live.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the schedule right now, but that is a big rival for them. I'm rooting for the High Point Rockers. You know, I'm rocking with the Rockers.
Yeah.
Jeb, we'll get to you in a second. That's Jeb Goldie. Just walked into the studio. But for now, we want to get to our forecasters. Meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees.
Happy Friday. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees here with WCNC Charlotte. A cloudy day for the majority of the afternoon here, but sunshine will eventually mix in for a few of us. It is going to be similar to yesterday, warm, muggy with the off and on shower and storm potential. Thankfully, the flooding risk trimmed back for only the mountains and foothills, and I think this is just because of the pockets of heavy rain they had yesterday. Still overall, not a significant risk here, but just be mindful if you see additional shower activity for those spots, especially west of 77 and north of the I-40 corridor. As we approach the afternoon, again, sunshine is going to mix in. When I say afternoon here, closer to 4 or 5 o'clock, we'll see the sun mixing in, becoming mostly cloudy. And this is where we'll see a secondary round of showers and thunderstorms move in for those same areas in the mountains and foothills. In the Charlotte area and most of the Piedmont, actually the best chance for rain and storms, probably between about 10 p.m. and about 4 a.m. as that's when we're going to finally see some of that more scattered rain and storm activity move in. That doesn't mean we don't keep in that small limited 20% chance of rain in for most of Friday, but this is going to again be that best opportunity. 10 and 4 is my thought so far as we've progressed throughout the mornings and early afternoon here. So the timing has been pretty consistent. 9 a.m. Tomorrow morning, by 10 a.m. we're looking at sunshine mixing in. The one secondary thing we'll have to watch on Saturday after some of that morning shower activity is this secondary line of potential spotty storms around 2 and 4 p.m. So this could impact tailgating for Charlotte FC, but I do anticipate most of this will be out of here by the time the match kicks off at 7:30. The reason why we'll have to watch 2 to 4 though is because of course not only are folks going to be out and about tailgating, but that's actually when the cold front starts to roll through. So as that cold front pushes in too, there will also be that potential for some increasing winds. So make sure you got something holding down the napkins at the tailgate and make sure those don't fly away. Tomorrow again, 80s, warm and muggy with that small chance of rain and storms. But once the cold front rolls in, I wouldn't say Saturday is a bad day by any stretch of the imagination, but Sunday, I mean, a big chef's kiss. We're looking at morning lows in the mid 50s, daytime highs in the mid 70s. Not only that, but the dew point is going to be much lower as we mix in some of that drier air. So right now we're looking at a limited potential for rain and storms Friday during the day, Friday night into Saturday morning. That's your best opportunity. Then we're dry for multiple days days before we slowly increase those rain chances by the end of the 7-day forecast. As we look past 7 days, pretty typical weather looks to be the case. Warm, chances for rain, but of course that is still way out of here. Here's the atmospheric moisture showing that strong cold front coming in on Saturday. This is where we get that drier air. Typically during the winter months, we're all seeing that brown coloring. We start to creep back into some of the blues and light greens this time of year, which would qualify as muggy for April standards. But by summertime, anytime we see the pink, that's when we're going to be desperately sweating. And that's when we start to see dew points more so in the muggy category, which is mostly 70s. Today we're in the 60s, which is still humid again for this time of year. By summertime, we'll be wishing we were here. Perfect weather again Sunday, Monday, with again not only clearer skies, but drier air being the dominant factor. Warmth though sticks around. I actually think Sunday will probably be the only day that we're at or below average for this time of year, as the warm weather is still going to be the dominating force. Now, wished pollen season was over already. Unfortunately, it's not, but with some of this rain this week, lower levels expected for Friday and Saturday. We'll probably see these increase a bit heading into the early part of next week, but the worst tree pollen season is past us. We start to see grass pollen entering into late spring, early summer, then weed pollen by the end of summer and early fall. Here's your Guy Roofing 7-day forecast. Scattered showers and storms tomorrow, another chance for early Saturday especially, and then much drier, much better weather on the way for Sunday and Monday. Have a great day and have a great weekend.
Well, it looks a lot better here than it does in Green Bay. This is a live look at Green Bay, Wisconsin NFL draft experience. Day one of the NFL draft, the first round in the books. Folks gearing up for rounds 2 and 3 this evening. We had an incredible draft special here on WCNC Plus. Hats off to the entire team. That includes Sports Director Nick Carboni, Danielle Stein, who was at Bank of America Stadium. All the folks, our locked-in sports team, Jeb Goldman, who worked his butt off for this special, who is here in studio. We'll get to you in a second, buddy. We'll get to you in a second. You hold your horses now, Jeb. This is Green Bay, Wisconsin. Did you get the weather?
46.
Ugh,
46 degrees.
Ugh.
Noon, and it's 46 degrees.
Oh, man. This is beanie, hoodie, jacket.
Hoodie.
Poncho.
Yeah.
Blanket. Yeah.
This is just stay inside.
But if you're from Wisconsin, live in Wisconsin.
Probably, this is probably nothing.
It's a sunny day outside today.
It's a nice Friday.
It's a nice brisk Friday. So look, we had a great show, but we also had some great recap from the first round. We had Reginald Walker Jr. from Sports Business Journal on the stream this morning, breaking down the Panthers pick and the first round. Let's take a listen in.
The second and third rounds will be held today.
Joining us this morning to talk more draft and the Panthers' choice to pick that wide receiver is Reginald Walker Jr. from the Sports Business Journal. Reginald, good morning to you. Thanks for getting up to speak with us. So we had to get your opinion. What did you think of the Panthers' pick last night?
Well, first and foremost, good morning. I'll say it this way. It was not a shock, but certainly a surprise. I thought they would go defense with the 8th pick, with the issues that they had last season on the defensive side of the football, but instead going Tetairoa McMillan. I actually liked the pick in a lot of ways. I just did not expect that to be the pick at that spot.
Yeah, sharing the same sentiment that our sports director, Nick Carboni, shared as well with us. What do you think? Can T-Mac, do you think he can step in right away?
I do. I think he can immediately be a part of this offense. I think there are some situations and scenarios, particularly if you get into some third and long type situations where you're looking at a scenario where McMillan's on the field with Adam Thielen, with Xavier Legette, with Jake Coker as well. So you start looking at that, you see a great deal of guys in that group that can win some one-on-one matchups from time to time. So I think you have to like that situation. And then you think about it projecting down the road. Adam Thielen is going to turn 35 years old just before the season starts. So McMillan could potentially slide right into that slot, gives them a big target as well going down the middle of the field.
I don't think that the number 1 pick, Cam Ward, came as a surprise to anyone, but what did you think of some of the other surprises last night? The whole Cleveland-Jacksonville trade-up. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I suspected that Cleveland might be active. I was actually going backwards for a second. I was actually in Nashville earlier this week. Had a chance to see the Browns owner, Jimmy Haslam, talk to him briefly. The city there was expecting and very excited for Cam Ward with the Tennessee Titans. On the added piece of that, getting back to the Browns and the trade, you knew the Jaguars had to do something to mix things up with their fortunes over the last few years. They're set at quarterback with a guy like Trevor Lawrence. They've had some issues. They picked up a bunch of receivers the last couple of years and then let some of those guys go because it didn't work out. You wondered if they would be aggressive, and they absolutely were aggressive. They go up and they get Travis Hunter, a guy that gives them something on both sides of the football, a dynamic playmaker. This is a Jaguars team that's also getting ready to undergo a stadium renovation. They're going to be playing in different places. They're looking for a draw, and certainly Travis Hunter gives them that. Very aggressive in doing so, but the Cleveland Browns, smart by them, they essentially, when you take out some of the pick swaps, they net 2 draft picks out of this. Obviously, this year, picking up a pick, but a first-round pick next year as well. So I think a good trade all the way around. Jacksonville gets their guy, and Cleveland gets more draft capital to fix a football team that's really been bad.
Let's go to the other name a lot of Panther fans were following last night, and that's Jalen Walker. A lot thought he would go to the Panthers. Instead, he gets picked up by the Falcons. Is he going to be a thorn in the Panthers' side all season?
Absolutely correct. He will be a thorn in the side of the Carolina Panthers for many years to come. I just like his ability off the edge. He's twitchy. He understands angles, makes the right decisions. But what I love the most about this kid, obviously, besides the fact that he's local and his father, he's a son of a coach, right? So his IQ is going to be something that is absolutely consistently growing because he understands how to study the game. Clearly had that opportunity early as a young kid. His father, a former head coach at Catawba College. So he really understands the game. I think that's what's going to help him become an absolute menace to the NFC South for years to come.
We should add that he is not the only son of a coach. We know that Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, is still available in the draft. What do you think will happen with that tonight? And also, what do you think the Panthers are going to go for tonight?
I think it's really interesting with what happens with Shedeur Sanders. Cleveland at the top of the second round. I suspect that they would be interested there. You can allow him to sit, even though probably most likely Deshaun Watson's going to be out this year with the re-tear, if you will, of his Achilles back in late November. I believe it was early January. So he had another surgery. He's likely going to miss the year. So you could potentially, obviously, if you go with Shedeur Sanders, he could potentially play. So that would help there. But then on the other side of things, maybe Cleveland's looking for some other options, looking for some other things. But I suspect Shedeur Sanders, who many had as a first-round talent, I suspect that he will come off the board in the first 2 or 3 picks here tonight in the second round.
All right. Reginald Walker Jr. with Sports Business Journal. Reginald, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you waking up with us.
Anytime. Really appreciate it.
Man, shout out to Reggie. I know Reggie. Reggie's a good guy. He has a great take on Reggie's end. A good recap of the first round. All right, so we have super producer Jeb Goldman here. All right, Jeb. So we talked yesterday before the draft. We talked about how you had a game plan.
Yep.
You were breaking it down.
Yep.
All right, take it from there. How did that go?
Well, and I think myself and the Panthers were in similar situations when the Jacksonville Jaguars traded up for Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
I think that sent really the whole draft into a complete disarray.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think. The Browns knew what they were doing, and yeah. I think that was a great trade for both involved.
Yeah.
But what it allowed the Browns to do was get Mason Graham, and I think we saw last night, and I said this yesterday during this stream. I was like, I think the Panthers want Mason Graham.
They want him a lot.
And I think they really wanted him. I think when he went off the board at 5 to Cleveland, they completely changed their draft strategy, and also completely changed our show because we had seen
the reaction.
Right. When we saw Mason Graham get taken, we had a live feed from the Jalen Walker watch party. Yeah. You could almost feel in our room. We had Julian Council with Locked On Sports, and obviously we could kind of feel. Oh, I don't think Jalen Walker is going to the Panthers, and we saw a report from ESPN's Adam Schefter moments before that the Panthers were looking to trade that 8th pick. They were taking calls. They wanted to trade down. There weren't a whole lot of takers because, I mean, when this was a draft, we kind of knew it would be difficult to trade down from that spot. So I think once that happened and there weren't any takers, they were thinking, we'll go offense. Never, and we had seen T-Mac as an option. I really did not. No, in no part of my mind. I built a bunch of graphics.
You built a board.
Yeah, I didn't see that happening. I knew he was an option. I'd seen him on mock draft.
I thought he was going to go to Dallas.
Yeah, I genuinely thought he was going to go to Dallas or just somewhere. Like, I just didn't. And I think it's a good pick. You've sold me on it. You've got some logic. You want to share that now? That makes a lot of sense.
We were talking about it during Reggie's interview. So, in today's league, you need 2 legit wide receivers. They believe in it. This is not an indictment on Xavier Legette.
No,
this is not an indictment. I think they fully believe in Xavier Legette. Last season was a young team. It is tough when you have a quarterback just trying to figure things out. You have a wide receiver that's trying to figure things out. So there's that. So you bring in a guy like T-Mac, and his comp is T. Higgins.
Right.
One of his comps is T. Higgins. T. Higgins is the guy that Carolina was very high on. They wanted to bring in through a trade.
Absolutely.
Or some sort, right? He got locked up with the Bengals. You bring in a guy whose comp is T. Higgins, it works out. Now, I've heard he doesn't create separation, but when your catch radius is out to here.
Right, you got a basketball-sized wingspan.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of what separation?
Yeah, you don't need it.
No, and it's a Bryce Young guy. And Bryce Young worked out with the guy. I think Bryce Young was in his ear. I do want to ask you.
Yeah.
How much of Jalen Walker was Jalen Walker a smokescreen to actually taking T-Mac or Mason?
And here's my hot take. And again, I haven't spoken with anybody with the Panthers. I don't know. But I always thought it was interesting when the only name that Dan Morgan mentioned in his press conference was Jalen Walker. I think of it kind of like a poker game. I think he was kind of bluffing a little bit. It was very strange. But I will tell you something.
It was a good bluff.
It was a very good bluff. I mean, got a lot of us. I think the person who was the most disappointed last night, briefly, was Jalen Walker. I mean, when they made the T-Mac pick, we had a live camera at the watch party, and you could see his heart sink. And mind you, he's going to Atlanta now. I think he's going to be very good in Atlanta. I think he's a very talented football player. I'm not worried about anyone but the Panthers about that pick specifically. But I think for a little while he was disappointed, and he probably thought himself that he was going to be staying home and going to Carolina.
Okay, so we got round 2 and round 3 tonight. Who do you have? Do you have round 2 and round 3?
Yes. Here, let me pull it up here.
Of course you do. I don't even know why I asked.
Well, sorry. Here.
I thought I was going to stump you.
I will tell you guys right now what I wanted in my dream scenario, because now we're talking. It can't happen now. I wanted the Panthers to trade down, get a higher second-round pick, draft Jalen Walker, and then with that second round, pick up Luther Burden out of Missouri.
Okay.
Burden is kind of the opposite of T-Mac. Well, not the opposite. The guy creates nothing but separation.
Right.
Problem was, all of the schemes he was put in the last season where he was catching the ball at the line of scrimmage. So you didn't really get to see his lightning speed off a route.
Right.
So now you've got a first-round caliber player who is going to be falling to the second round because he was in a bad situation because there was a lot of stuff going on with Missouri. So that's what I wanted.
Mizzou grad, by the way.
Yeah, MIC, big Mizzou grad. That all said, I think now the Panthers have to go defense heavy. There's the other difficult thing is I think they're the 57th. I mean, they're down the board. I mean,
they're not.
That is going to be tough. So we look at guys who are in the second round that I really, really like. I'm pulling up my my board here.
Look at that.
Lots of names.
That is
here.
very
color
coordinated.
Oh man! Shout out Connor Raj with NBC Sports for just being amazing. We had him on the show. I mean,
I saw that. Yeah.
He's the best. So you've got guys like Danny Stutzman, Barrett Carter, linebacker. Like, I think they just ensure the trend. Like every defensive player. I think they just keep drafting defense.
So they're going defense.
That's what I'm thinking, especially when you're thinking about value for where they are in the draft. I think we're going to see some really interesting trades. I'd like to see some players already on rosters involved in some of these trades.
Yeah, I mean, I think way before the combine. I think going into the offseason, the Panthers thought they were going to get a playmaker, a wide receiver through free agency or through trade.
Yeah.
And then they could use the draft to focus just on defense.
Right.
Obviously, it didn't shake out like that. So you have to change the game plan. I think you got some good guys going into day 2, day 3.
Absolutely.
I said this yesterday. Rounds 2 through 5, your foundational pieces to your team.
That's what builds a championship roster.
Look at the Seahawks.
Yep.
They build an entire championship roster.
Yep.
Off
All in those value
rounds.
picks. Look at the Niners. I mean,
Yep,
so
the
many
Niners,
crazy, amazing value picks. So this is where I really think the Panthers have had some difficulty in years past.
Yep,
and
agree.
I would like to see them really, really thrive here. I think this is a really unique opportunity for Dan Morgan to strut his stuff. I think the difference between a good and a great general manager is a guy who can look at those lower, I mean, second isn't even a lower round, but a guy who can look past the first round, past those guys who are going to be stars, and be like, all right, who's going to make a difference for our roster? Because I think the Panthers should be very confident going into this next year. And I think, and again, I haven't talked to Dan Morgan, but if Dan, you're watching, I'd love to get coffee.
We've said it before. Call in.
Right, 100%. We'd love to hear from you.
We'd love to hear from you, Dan.
We'd have that function made.
Right, exactly. Like literally, we can get you in any way.
We have you.
But I think ultimately they think Bryce Young's going to take a massive leap this year.
I think so.
And at the end of the day, he's going to have enough to go around.
Yeah.
I think they genuinely believe that they can get T-Mac and get Leggett to 1,000 yards each because Bryce Young's going to be slinging it and he's going to be good and he's going to show you why he was the first overall pick, why they traded up to get him.
And don't forget the guy from Texas they drafted in the second round, Jatavian Sanders.
Yes, the tight end.
Yep. Yeah, showed a lot of promise. He got banged up a little bit last year, but
he looked good when he was playing.
Showed a lot of promise in that first year. Look, and I brought up Seattle because Dan Morgan worked in the front office of Seattle. Dave Canales on that coaching staff in Seattle.
Turned Geno Smith into a star.
Connecting the dots. You see what I'm doing here,
I like
Carlene?
this. We got a lot of Knicks and know a lot about sports here at WCNC Charlotte.
That's something you mentioned before. He's like, Tepper's not very patient.
No, he's not.
Things kind of need to
and he's happening
pick
now.
up, and they got to pick up fast because we've seen in the past if they don't.
Tepper is usually patient-ish in the first year. But that second year is when the heat starts to turn up.
Yep.
And so Tepper ideally doesn't want to go through another tenure of a GM, a head coach. Like, he doesn't want to go through that.
And they're coming with momentum. I think that's important to say. This is the first time in a while, and you would know better than me, but I feel like Panthers fans have some excitement. I think there is some momentum. They finished the year really hot. I mean, the close games they lost were against some, two Super Bowl caliber teams. And they held their own. So, and the games they won were exciting, great, amazing football games. So I think if you're a Panthers fan right now, you look at the T-Mac pick, you got to be happy. You look closely to see what they do tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I really like what they're doing. I'm hoping that they make a couple more moves, shore up the defense. But man, this could be a really exciting time to be a Panthers fan.
Yeah, it is. We'll have to get you a T-Mac jersey.
You know what? I'll rock that. I love him. California boy myself.
Oh, man. Shout out to Jeb. Shout out to his take. I'm not mad at it. I like giving him a hard time. It's all good, Jeb. It's all good. Last night, after the pick, we heard from Dave Canales, head coach Dave Canales, and GM Dan Morgan. And following that pick, let's take a listen in.
What's up, guys? Good evening. How you doing?
How we doing?
Good. Oh, doing good. Oh, okay. Yeah, first of all, we're super excited about, our 8th pick, getting Tet. He's somebody that we obviously really liked. Thought he could really add a different dimension to our offense and just add another playmaker to the offensive side of the ball. So not only a great player, but he's a great kid and somebody that Dave and I really value. So we're excited to have him in the building and excited to get going with him.
Can you tell us about some of the calls that you were fielding? We heard that you were fielding some calls for that number 8 pick.
Yeah, we did. We had a few calls. Obviously, you entertain everything, and at the end of it, we wanted to get our guy, and we're excited about it.
What wide receiver at this point versus defense, which you said was a big need coming in the offseason?
Yeah, and it's still a need, and we have 8 more picks, so we wanted to add the best player. We wanted to follow our board of who we thought was going to help us the most up there. So again, we got our guy, and we're excited about it.
And you said he adds a different dimension, actually, for both of you guys. What is that dimension, and was there any concern about kind of his lack of elite speed?
Yeah, I think he has really good play speed. I think the thing that pops off the tape about Ted is just how smooth he is, his body control, his ability to adjust to all types of throws, his catch radius, and his hands are elite. He catches everything outside his frame, and he can win the jump ball down the field and in the red zone. He's a guy that has 18 touchdowns the past 2 years, so he puts the ball in the end zone, and obviously that's something that we want to do.
Dave, do you view him as a day one impact starter?
Absolutely, he's going to have to work for it. He certainly, comes in just like everybody else, and comes into a talented group. Probably the thing I'm most excited about is just the further we dug in, the pro day, all the postseason work, just getting to know the guy, spending time with him. We had him here on a 30 visit, to be able to spend a little bit more time and just making sure that he was the right fit for our team. The type of players we're looking for. They love playing ball. They love to work on their craft, and it really shows up, when I just kind of, we were, Dan and I, just the last couple of days, as we're getting ready for this pick, we're just nitpicking, and so I put my receiver coach hat on, and just watched his pro day and watched his just his route craft, the way that he can reduce his surface in the top of routes as a 6'4" guy, the way he comes back to the ball, some of the things that you look for as a great starting point for a receiver, and so, giving us that good size element, the red zone target, a lot of things to be excited about, so something that was really cool for us to just come together on, and kind of knew, unless somebody blew us out of the water with something, we weren't going to let our guy pass, and so it was a great moment for us.
How much of an impact did the additions that you guys were able to add on the defensive side of the ball in free agency, how much did that impact your draft board?
You certainly take it all into consideration, but like Dan said, we follow the board. You rank the players how you like them and where the talent's at, and so you just stay true to it. And it comes right to you. Some of those picks right before us, really thought, the fifth pick was a big moment for us. Kind of like what was going to happen here that was going to help us get our guy at that point. And so, with Cleveland taking Mason Graham right there in that spot, the board kind of felt like Ted's going to make it, and we're holding our breath right there, for a couple more picks, but really excited about that.
You guys as a program have preached size and length. Obviously, McMillan fits those molds. I'm just curious, how does he fit into the wide receiver room from a complementary standpoint, outside of those attributes?
Yeah, shoot, you got a basketball team going on right now. There's different attributes, and Xavier, the power and speed he brings, Thielen's craftsmanship. You saw Jalen Coker come on strong last year. Tet all of a sudden brings in this really long, 6'4" target to kind of round out the group. So, it's a really cool group to think about. And obviously, right off the bat, Brad and Rob come down the hall, and I'm like, all right, boys, here we go. And so pretty exciting.
I know I harp on this point a lot, but you're a former wide receivers coach. Brad's a former wide receivers coach. Rob, all of his accolades. You guys have invested so heavily in wide receiver. From a developmental standpoint, how much pressure does that put on you guys to kind of deliver and make that group kind of ascend?
I love that. I love for the pressure to be on us to utilize these guys with their talents, the unique abilities they have, to fit them into the core of our schemes, to continue to find out who we are, and to find that identity, in the pass game. And then, of course, just from a team standpoint, just getting football players, getting dogs, getting playmakers, and we really felt like we got that in Ted.
How much did just the way Bryce finished the season and seeing that uptick, how much did that go into saying, look, we got defensive needs, but we got to get this quarterback another weapon?
Yeah, I think for me it's and for Dan as well, we got to do what's best for the team, and the best thing we can do is to evaluate our board to stay true to where we have guys at. And when you really have conviction about a player, and they come to you, you know, the alternatives, like the trade alternatives and all those things, they got to like blow you out of the water, you know, to pass up on all the work that's been done, you know, not just, you know, myself and Dan, but his whole staff, my staff as well, just looking at these guys and being able to evaluate them and so that it's a collective decision, so that we all go into this thing with a commitment to make the Panthers better.
You guys both had said individually this offseason that you were good with the receiver group you have. Clearly, you felt it needed another piece, though.
No, I wouldn't so much say that. I mean, you know, I just think, again, like, you follow your board and you take the best players, and Tet was high on our board. We obviously felt really good about him, and he was there for the taking, so we didn't want to pass up on a good player.
Was there a particular moment where you guys looked at each other and said, okay, this is our guy?
I felt like it was about, like, every time we watched him, we're just like, you know, another great catch, and just the way that he just it's effortless, that the way he catches the ball, and he catches everything outside his frame, and he's just a great receiver that is super fluid. His body control is some of the best I've seen in a while. So yeah, he's exciting.
And the one thing that I really learned from Dan just through the process is the biggest challenge, which is all still new to me as a head coach, is to get into the horizontal comparisons of offensive players versus defensive players. And when you start looking player for player and the dynamic way that they move, the dynamic way they play, and having to try to compare them across different positions, apples to oranges, was really kind of where we came back in the process and kept putting him on. And then you're like really excited, and you almost can't turn the tape off. So it's like it stood out, you know, in such a special way that, you know, he made the decision easy for us.
Yeah.
You guys 2 years in a row, wide receiver, first round, you turning into an offensive guy there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm turning into a guy that just wants to bring good football players in here, and it's just another opportunity to bring a great player in here.
Is there a chance you're not done today?
No. Yeah. No, I think we're done. Yeah. I was like, no, I meant like, no, we're not.
When you look at last year's draft,
your eyes got really big, Bob.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna be busy. When you look at the way you guys handled last year's draft, now that this first pick's in, what lessons can you possibly take from last year that you might apply now to day 2 and day 3?
Yeah, I think it's just going back, reassessing your board, and trying to figure out what guy is going to fall to us at 57, and then just kind of weighing the options of, you know, hey, should we trade up? Should we stay where we're at? Should we trade back? So, you know, I just think all options are on the table again, right, you know, with this second pick, and, you know, we're just going to attack it, and we're going to follow the board.
Could you have traded back? Did you have like a form off?
We had a lot of people sniffing around. You know, I think it would have had to be something above and beyond, you know, for us to kind of pull off this pick. But yeah, that's where we were.
You said you had some good conversations leading up to the draft with him. Can you talk about the cultural fit that he might be with us in?
And that is a press conference that happened last night after the Panthers selected Tetairoa McMillan with the 8th pick. T-Mac with the 8th pick in the draft last night. That's Dave Canales right there speaking. They're also speaking. They're having another press conference, an introductory press conference today. We'll try to get you that during the stream this afternoon. We want to shift over now to a story that we've been following now this week. And I just want to read you the headline along with what we have in our web article to set this up. So the headline reads, "Parent of teen charged with murder in gas station shooting arrested." So it's happened in Rock Hill. A 16-year-old was shot and killed at a Rock Hill gas station late Tuesday night. That's according to police. Now, Rock Hill police responded to a shooting at the Quick Trip on Cherry Road just before 11:30 p.m. When officers arrived, they found a 16-year-old who had been shot in the chest. The teen was taken to Piedmont Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. Now, later in the afternoon, the county coroner's office identified the victim as Jaden Reed of Chester. Detectives identified 17-year-old Carnell Mike as the suspect in the shooting. He was taken into custody in Richburg, South Carolina, and then transported to the Rock Hill jail. Mike was charged with murder, possession of a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, and possession of a firearm by a person under 18. Rock Hill police say Mike is being charged as an adult in this case. Now, this is the part that has a lot of folks talking on social media, especially after we posted this update. Listen to this. Carnell Mike's mother and stepfather, his mother, LaShondra Collins and Anthony Collins, were arrested on Thursday and charged with misprision of a felony. The pair is accused of helping Mike avoid arrest after they were made aware of the deadly shooting. Again, this has garnered a lot of attention. We've gotten hundreds of comments on that part of this case. I want to bring in attorney Gary Monty. Gary, thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for joining Live Impact News. I reached out to you this afternoon because, again, a lot of folks are talking about it. And the biggest question is, how is this the case? Why are the parents charged?
Nick, thank you. It's a good question. And in North and South Carolina, although the law on this is different as between the states, both of our states adopted the English common law way back when we were leaving the English colonies. And what that means is we adopted the English law that was in place at that time. And one of those laws was something called misprision of a felony. And so what's that? Misprision of a felony, it means that essentially it's similar to obstructing justice. It means that the police come to you, they're investigating a crime, and as opposed to saying nothing or saying the truth, you say something that helps conceal the crime, or you help say you misdirect the police from one person to another or in some other way to help the person that committed the crime escape. And it's a felony in South Carolina. You can serve 3 years for this. There's nothing new about it. The South Carolina Supreme Court has defined it as the offense of misprision of a felony as the criminal neglect to either prevent the commission of a felony or to bring a felon to justice. And so whether it's parents or your best friend or someone else, you can be charged with this. It's a very serious crime. There is a federal analog to this. It's a little bit different. But in the main, when you're thinking about it, I would say think about obstruction of justice as the essence of this charge.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the discourse in our comment section and on social media is because, I mean, you said this could be a friend, this could be a cousin, but because these are parents, and folks are like, well, the parents didn't do anything. But in this case, they actually did, right?
Yes. So if you help conceal a crime, or you help someone get away with it or abscond, when the police or the FBI, some government official comes in and asks you questions, you could always choose to say no. I'm not answering any questions. And I realize not everybody can afford a lawyer every time the police might show up at their door. But certainly this is the kind of thing where if you have a family member that has committed a crime and the police show up at your door, certainly there's nothing preventing you from calling a lawyer or saying, I prefer to have my lawyer here. I recognize that that's uncomfortable for most people and that most people cannot afford a lawyer and don't have a lawyer on standby. So in the absence of that, certainly either not saying anything or is the better choice to make, or answering truthfully. I understand that if you've got a family member that has committed a crime, how hard that might be. But doing many of the other alternatives, including helping your son or daughter get away, is not advisable and could result in being charged with a felony.
And Gary, before I let you go, we got one other question. Folks were just wondering, Carnell Mike, the suspect in the shooting, 17 years old, charged as an adult. This is typical in a case like this, right?
Well, the prosecutor makes judgments about whether or not someone is going to be prosecuted as an adult. And then, of course, they've got to get past a judge and approval and all of that sort of thing. But it's very common if you're 17 years old. Most of us are going to be considered an adult, particularly for something like this, a very, very serious crime. Everyone may remember when the church shootings happened in Charleston a few years back. people were arrested and charged for misprision of a felony in that case because they misdirected law enforcement who was trying to investigate and prosecute that crime. So this is very serious, and it's sad that you might have to say something about a family member or not, but otherwise, it doesn't matter who it is. You're not allowed to misdirect the police in a way that violates this common law felony.
That is Gary Monty, attorney Gary Monty. Thank you for your time. Thank you for breaking down this incident. Again, it's, as I mentioned when I reached out, a lot of folks had a lot to say about this. So hopefully this sort of clears it up. And Gary, you're always welcome back here on Live Impact News.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to help.
All right. That is Gary Monty offering us some understanding of this case. Again, I want to get back to that web article I had. The parents of teen charged with murder in a gas station shooting, they were arrested. Again, this is a story that we've been following all week, and as news of the story continues to develop, we'll bring it to you here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus in real time. All right, so we want to switch gears now. We want to totally switch gears. So there's a big event happening Sunday. Big event. Okay, Tunnel to Towers climb in Charlotte is happening Sunday. And just a little bit of backstory if you're wondering what this is. So this was born from the tragedy of 9/11. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation carries forward a legacy of courage and heroism, built upon the mantra, quote, "While we have time, let us do good." The foundation supports our nation's fallen and injured first responders, military heroes, and their families. This is a great event. CMPD was actually on our live stream this morning from 7 to 9, talking about it. Let's listen into that interview.
This weekend, hundreds will lace up their sneakers and climb nearly 1,500 steps at Bank of America Stadium, all to honor fallen first responders.
It's part of the 8th annual Tunnel to Towers Charlotte Climb, a powerful event rooted in remembrance and in service. Join us now to talk about it, CMPD Deputy Chief Zuru Shukri. Deputy Chief, thanks for coming on. That's a lot of steps. That's a lot of work. But I know, all joking aside, it's important work for folks who've never taken part, or for folks who have not been a part of it. Explain what this is all about.
So obviously the tragic events of September 11th, which has forever impacted the country. This is where the Tunnel to Towers event came out of, as the guy who organized it, Frank Seiler, had lost his brother, who was a NYFD fireman. And for this year, it has special meaning for us because of the April 29th tragedy, which happened last year, where we lost 4 law enforcement officers, and 4 others were shot. A couple others were critically injured, who had really catastrophic injuries as a result of it. This has special bearing for the city of Charlotte, which is our home and where this event took place. But we were very fortunate. Each year we had hosted the Tunnel to Towers stair climb, and where it took place in Uptown at one of the high-rise buildings. But this year, through a generous donation through the Tepper Foundation, we were able to actually hold it in Bank of America Stadium, particularly for the involvement of our local community, because it didn't just affect the law enforcement community, it affected the whole city, yourselves included, people that live here and depend on law enforcement for public safety.
So this is going to be obviously on a larger scale, being at Bank of America Stadium. What should people who are maybe first-timers expect if this is their first time participating?
Well, they should expect a really good time. This event, even though it's in remembrance of a tragedy, it's really about triumph. It's about coming together as a community as a whole and supporting our law enforcement officers and other first responders, but more importantly, the Tunnel to Towers of the company, the organization, really helped and stepped up to pay off the mortgages of the widows of that event and some prior, widows that we had here, or widower, particularly with Mia Goodwin. It's been a really, we wanted to have an event that was tied to the first responder community, but to host it in a place where all of the community could come out and be a part of it and kind of celebrate by moving forward with something that was positive. You know, there's nothing more fun than actually doing some physical activities. You can bring your families out. You can, I know it's a lot of steps to have to climb, but you know, it's really about remembrance as well. And you know, as people take the time to climb each step, you know, obviously we want to keep those that were lost in our thoughts and prayers, but certainly to honor their memory as we move forward as a community.
You just mentioned Mia Goodwin. You also mentioned the 4 officers from last year, almost a year to the date of this event. How should people expect that you all will be remembering some of your specific CMPD officers?
Well, certainly at the opening ceremony, it's going to be, you know, solemn. It's going to be, you know, obviously a more formal period of time as we have some of the speakers come up. Our chief of police, you know, who will be speaking, and I know the U.S. Marshal Service acting director will be here. Mark Patella will be here. The mayor will be there, city manager. I believe Mr. Tepper will be there also. I mean, it's really, I want people to understand that even though the beginning of the ceremony might seem solemn, the rest of it is about, you know, coming together and celebrating the life of those that were given in service, and certainly showing the community support means so much to us. Like for the first responder community, I've lived here in Charlotte since 1982. I grew up here. My brother was a police officer who retired from CMPD. My dad was a customs officer. Like we do public service as a way of living, and a lot of these public servants do that now. It's great to show community support for us because we are part of what the community represents. We live here, we raise our children here, and we believe in the safety of this community no matter what it looks like. And sometimes service looks like sacrifice.
And part of serving our community and being first responders, you mentioned the physical fitness of it all. Again, 1,500 steps.
Yes.
So people should be at least somewhat physically fit, and think about what the physicality of this includes to participate.
Yes, so, well, we want you to know you don't have to run the steps. You can actually walk it.
Good to know.
We did make, there are going to be a couple lanes open, you know, so if you want to sign up, you know, I encourage people to go to the Tunnel to Towers Charlotte Stair Climb, you know, sign up for the race, support the organization, support us. But yes, the event that day is going to be quite fun. You can walk it at your own pace. If you're an athlete like you two, you guys can actually probably run it.
Don't be so certain.
Lots of activities for the kids on the field. It's going to be a great field day. They'll have bounce houses set up for the kids, and a lot of vendors that are going to be on the field. And of course, being inside Bank of America Stadium is just an experience itself. So it'll be great for folks to come out and just kind of experience that and also show support.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. What would you say to folks, because this is open to the public, correct?
It is. They have to sign up, and actually, I mean, obviously, you know, we want folks to sign up for it because the Tunnel to Towers is being supported by this event, and so you can go sign up, and I think you can also sign up just as a spectator and come to the event, and they want to have some accountability for that.
Gotcha.
Wonderful. And so they actually go through the tunnel with the Panthers players. That's where it ends.
Cool,
you actually go through the tunnel.
Run out of the Panthers' head the same way the players do. So it's going to be pretty exciting. You run out onto the field at the conclusion of the stair climb, and it's really, you get to work your way in through some areas that you may not normally have access to, you know, as a civilian or even, you know, a public service employee. So it's really a lot of fun. It's going to be a great experience for the community and for us too as well.
So what are the details? What do people need to know? Where can they register? That sort of thing.
So great. We want them to go to the Tunnel to Towers Charlotte Stair Climb. I guess it's maybe tunneltotowers.org, and then make sure you do the Charlotte Stair Climb because they have others across the country. I know for right now you still get if you're a law enforcement or first responder, you have a discounted rate. For the public, you have a general rate. Then I know for teenagers, if they're planning on running the event, it's a very discounted rate, and if you have little ones, it's also even further discounted. So just check those out and those details out, and show up. If you want to be there for the opening ceremony, which I encourage people to do, be there by 0900.
Okay.
But the event rolls through about midday, so you have plenty of time to get done. And like I said, if you want to take your time and walk, you know, by all means, we encourage that too.
Good to know that's an option.
That's right.
1,500 steps. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Deputy Chief, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you too.
A really important event for our community, and I know for our law enforcement officers, and even if it is a bit physically taxing, all 1,500 steps.
No, definitely. Thank you guys for everything you do for Charlotte.
Oh, absolutely.
Pleasure.
It's our pleasure. A reminder, Tunnel to Towers, Charlotte Climb, happening this Sunday. Bank of America Stadium, first time happening there. Going to be a big event. Starts at 9 a.m., open to all agers, and you can register online or sign up in person the morning of the climb. Keep in mind, proceeds support families of fallen first responders and wounded veterans.
All right, so we want to get out to some breaking news that we are keeping our eye on in L.A. Let's take you there live. This is Hollywood Hills pickup pursuit ending in a standoff outside of a home. This is coverage from NBC 4 L.A. Let's listen in to their coverage right now.
Officers has certainly changed. It's lessened to a certain degree. Obviously, you know, they're going to keep on guard at all times, but we know that a mental health professional may have been called to this scene. As Julia mentioned, no word on when that person may arrive to try and get this driver to finally surrender. This is a chase, again, that began in the LAPD Olympic Division area. They started this pursuit of a hit-and-run suspect. It made its way up Laurel Canyon, and I believe we may still have some video of some of the moments leading up to where this chase is at this point. But we saw this a very slow speed pursuit winding up the canyon. Right here you see the truck driver drive right over a spike strip, so a successful spike strip. When we look at Julia's shot, you can see the front tires, at least of the truck, are shredded to pieces. But the driver was able to keep going. It was moments later here at a very slow speed. We saw LAPD officers attempt not one but two pit maneuvers before finally attempting a third one. You see right here, the first pit attempt, the truck driver still able to get away. The officer's going to attempt another one, and the driver was able to get away once again. Part of that likely being this was at such a slow speed when they happened. Successful pit maneuvers must be within a certain speed range, not too slow, certainly not too fast. You see the truck was able to get away, and then Camilla, we saw moments later this truck eventually, after a third pit, would pull over in the driveway.
Yeah, and we saw the tire completely gone from that spike strip, but also thinking. But looking at, the imagery here, just how this winding road, PD, making that successful pit maneuver there at the end. And then obviously you've got the traffic and people trying to figure out what to do. We saw earlier a lot of people just turning around, not wanting to wait. But at this point, Julia, the traffic in that area, I think drivers at this point understand what's going on and now have left.
Any additional traffic delays out the window of the helicopter or on the traffic map. So this closure is definitely still in place. But if you're not seeing this on your track, just know that this is a live picture. You still cannot get through northbound or southbound on Coldwater Canyon. So definitely do not take this canyon road south of Ventura. Jonathan, listening to you just narrate the last few minutes of this pursuit during those pit maneuvers and watching on our monitor up here in News Chopper 4, it strikes me that I feel like I'm watching it in slow motion because it was moving so slowly. I mean, we've seen officers attempt pit maneuvers up to about 40, 45 miles per hour. You can be successful and safe at those speeds if there's no traffic nearby. In this case, it was moving so slowly. I wonder if that impacted the final outcome, because they did try 3 times, and that was after 2 spike strip attempts before this truck finally pulled over. But it did not pull over as part of a final surrender for quite some time after it ended up here sandwiched between the LAPD ground unit and these hedges. You pointed out, Jonathan, how the back tire was still spinning.
Yes. Yeah, no, just to your point, I mean, the point of a pit maneuver, right, ideally, Julia, is to disable the vehicle, to make it pull over, to disable it from allowing the driver to keep going. When it's at that slow a speed, they obviously did not disable the vehicle, so I guess those would be considered an unsuccessful pit to a degree, but still, they rattled this driver just enough. The driver certainly didn't go much faster. They were able, with that third pit attempt, to really narrow down this driver into this driveway, but like you mentioned, yeah, we saw that back wheel, a few attempts to back right into those officers. Never a good idea during a chase. Often we see drivers who are charged with assault on a peace officer when they do things like that, because their vehicle is essentially being used as a weapon. But Julia, it's been interesting to see how this has progressed, because when the truck finally stopped. You have the officers pinning it in, 2 more vehicles on the side of it to make sure that driver can no longer escape. We see the guns drawn, but now we're about 20, 25 minutes later, and we see a much more relaxed posture from those officers.
They're so relaxed, it tells me they must have confirmed at this point there are no weapons in this truck, and the driver is not believed to be any kind of immediate danger to them. However, we did hear that mental health unit being called. Perhaps the driver is believed to be a danger to himself or herself. And as I widen out here, I want to give you a look at something I spotted at the top of our shot earlier. You see that red and white near the top? We're looking at this on a tiny monitor, but it looks to me like there's an ambulance standing by now. So just in case anything happens here, City Fire has been called. EMS is on scene, and you can see the response on the ground here.
We have started our 11 a.m. newscast early to bring you this breaking news. I'm Camilla Rambaldi here with Jonathan Gonzalez.
We are following the very latest on a chase that began. We're still trying to get the details in the LAPD Olympic Division. They began this chase of a hit-and-run suspect. We saw it was a slow-speed chase when Julia first got over it in News Chopper 4. We saw the driver hit a spike strip multiple times. The LAPD attempting to pit the vehicle multiple times before that vehicle finally came to a stop in this driveway. And what we have right now is a standoff happening in this driveway. We know at least in one of those homes there, someone is home. They've not been contacted by police, but we spoke with them just a few minutes ago. They're terrified about what's happening just feet away from them, right outside their home in the driveway. Let's get back up to Julia Dang, because Julia, at Last Word, we had a call for a mental health expert to come to the scene. You just mentioned an ambulance appears to be on the way up the road. It's unclear though if that's connected. And then this driver who gets out finally for just a moment, only to jump back in, and officers really struggling to see what's going inside the vehicle, given that the windows are so tinted, they're basically blacked out.
That's right. We don't know what this driver is doing right now. Officers are not acting like they feel like they're in any immediate danger, but stationed around this. So north of here on Coldwater Canyon, you see that ambulance, and then south of this scene, you see a fire truck. So the fire department is here. They are ready for whatever might happen, but we have not seen any kind of action, no movement from this truck since a couple minutes ago when that driver got out briefly for just a couple seconds, looked back at the officers, and then got back in. And during that brief encounter, you saw officers bunching up behind their ground units again, weapons drawn, but now they're standing by, relaxed. And we still have 2 officers behind this red SUV parked outside one of these homes. And what's incredible is that we actually talked to the woman who owns that vehicle, who lives in this home, Jonathan. We were just talking about, are people going to come out and wonder what in the world is going on? And our assignment desk managed to track down one of the homeowners here, one of the residents. And I wanted to get her take on what she's seeing, if she's able to peek perhaps on the other side of this truck. But she sounded just so rattled by what's happening. I think she's watching what we're doing to give her a sense of what's playing out right outside her front door.
Understandably rattled. This is also affecting one of the busiest roads in all of LA County. At any given moment, especially during the week, Coldwater Canyon is a traffic nightmare no matter which direction you're going. And now both sides are shut down. A reminder, Coldwater Canyon is shut down in both directions here at Clawson as the LAPD just tries to get this officer to get out of the vehicle safely so that they can be taken into custody after what's been a pursuit now almost 90 minutes in. It started around 9:30 in the LAPD Olympic Division area after a report of a hit and run. We are still working, our assignment desk working hard right now to get more details on exactly what that initial hit and run was involved in or what it was. We do know, Julia, as well, we saw damage to the front of this vehicle and then, a really slow speed pursuit. I think you said when you first got over it, you didn't even realize that the truck was part of the pursuit.
No, I had no idea. I zoomed in on it and I was like, okay, I'm hearing it should be at this intersection. Where is it? I'm not seeing it. And then I realized this is it. We're not used to seeing pursuits move like this, because if somebody is trying to get away, especially when the roads are clear and they're not blocked by traffic, we see them hitting the gas. But when this driver decided to hit the gas, it was after the truck was already disabled. And we saw that back tire spinning, like here she was trying to back up into these LAPD units. So at this point, you know, the truck's not going anywhere. It's just a question of when this driver decides to get out and stay out of the truck this time and surrender. But you see more officers walking up now to this scene. Again, if you look at their body language, if you look at their pretty relaxed posture relative to what we saw earlier when they first had this driver at gunpoint, or the truck rather, because the driver never got out of the truck for long enough to really be at gunpoint. This is a very different scene. So it looks like the fire truck and the ambulance, they're still stationed around here just in case something happens, but very little action for now, and traffic finally has cleared up north and south of this scene on Coldwater Canyon. If you are trying to head down the hills, you can take Ventura Boulevard east of here, and you can try Laurel Canyon instead. In fact, this driver was headed north on Laurel Canyon before he turned onto Mulholland and then ended up here on Coldwater Canyon.
And Julia, we have learned from the LAPD that this alleged hit and run happened near Hollywood and Vine. That's some of the latest information that we're getting right now from the LAPD, but still, we're still working to find out more details again on that hit and run, and that ended, this pursuit that ended right here in this neighborhood in front of this home, as you were just describing, Julia, earlier. Just understandably, you know, for the people that live in this area, what it was like just watching this unfold right in front of their driveway here in just the last 45 minutes, and what that was like. You know, we spoke to a woman earlier on the phone who lives in that home, who was just describing what this was like for her.
And before we want to get into Julia, we're going to let our viewers know that we are beginning our 11 a.m. newscast right now. I'm Jonathan Gonzalez, here joined by Camilla Rambaldi. We are following this breaking news of a pursuit that started around 9:30 following a hit and run in the Hollywood area. The suspect ending the pursuit so far in the driveway of a home in Coldwater Canyon.
Yeah, we've been following this for the last 45 minutes or so. And again, that pursuit coming to an end in a residential neighborhood here in the Hollywood Hills. Julia Dang on our News Chopper 4 there with a wide look at earlier. Jonathan, traffic was backed up. It's obviously, as you can tell from our picture here, the traffic has cleared, but earlier a very different scene of just cars just all along this winding road trying to figure out what was going on.
And Coldwater on any given day of the week, we know in LA, is one of the busiest stretches of road anywhere in the county. When we say, we should clarify that this pursuit is over. Let's get back up to Julia Dang overhead in our News Chopper 4. She's been following us with this, along with us here for the past about an hour or so. Julia mentioned it. I mean, this was so slow. In fact, when you got over the chase, let our viewers know you didn't even realize that this truck was the one being pursued.
No, and Jonathan, that's never happened before on a chase, but I zoomed in and I was like, this can't be it. You know, I'm looking for a truck that's weaving in and out of traffic, that's on the move, right? Pursuit drivers have a certain kind of behavior to them, and then we doubled back and realized quickly, wait, no, this is it, and it was only driving about 5 to 10 miles per hour initially. And this truck never went faster than 20 miles per hour when News Chopper 4 was over it, and it was moving so slowly during those multiple pit maneuver attempts. If we play back that video again, it looks like it's actually in slow motion. But I've been shooting this wide because if you look north of here, top of the screen to the right of this scene, it looks like another red vehicle pulled up. I'm wondering if that was sent by the fire department as well. I think it's behind those trees, directly behind that ambulance, which has been here at the ready for about 15 minutes. We are getting some new details, though, and we still need to verify this, confirm it with LAPD, but I'm hearing now this truck may be stolen. So in addition addition to the hit and run, that could be another charge this driver is looking at.
Absolutely. And again, this is following a hit and run that happened at Hollywood and Vine just after 9:30. It's unclear if that hit and run involved a pedestrian or another vehicle. That is more information that we're trying to learn. But on the right side of your screen is some of how we got here. If our directors can somehow put that back up, we did see this truck winding its way up Laurel Canyon, according to Julia. Then eventually on Mulholland, we're right here, the truck actually ran over a spike strip. It was one of 2 spike strip attempts. That one successful there, shredding the front tires of this vehicle. Moments later, we would see it come to an end, but not before the LAPD would attempt not 1, not 2, but 3 different pit maneuvers to try to disable the vehicle. Unfortunately, those first 2 unsuccessful, likely because it was such a slow speed pursuit. I think Julia mentioned it. We're not even going 10 miles an hour here at one point. You see the second attempt right here, Camilla, and still not successful. That truck driver was able to get away even a little bit further before finally coming to an end in this driveway. What's stunning to me is we know people are home here where this pursuit has stopped for now. It is now a standoff, and we got to speak with one of the homeowners, Camilla, who was very rattled, understandably, about what's going on.
Yeah, she was, at home when this all happened, and this all came to an end right in front, right in her driveway there. And what was amazing to see, Jonathan, is his driver was still trying to leave after, that tire on that passenger side completely shattered there. So it was still incredible to see how this driver was still trying to get out of that driveway. And we know a mental health professional was requested earlier. Do we know at this point, Julia, any additional updates on that from the LAPD?
I think they're standing by. They're waiting to engage because this driver has not shown any progress, right? Any signs that she might come out of the truck. And I'm using that pronoun because I'm hearing now that it is a female driver. I'm hearing too, again, unconfirmed, but it is believed the person who was hit at 9:30 this morning in Hollywood might actually be somebody this driver knows. So a lot of new information coming out, but still look at the body language of these officers. Very relaxed, arms crossed. I'm seeing hands in pockets. They don't have their weapons up. They are still standing behind the vehicle doors, using them as shields. But if you look behind Cheryl's car here, this red SUV parked in the driveway, the 2 officers who were standing behind it for quite some time, they walked away a couple minutes ago. So nothing has changed with the truck. Nothing has changed with the behavior of the driver because we simply can't see what they're doing. But officers here are just in a holding pattern. And I believe the LAPD airship is still overhead as well, just circling this, keeping eyes on the scene. So it's just a game of wait and see at this point.
And Julia, we know that the traffic is obviously being stopped at a lower level on either side of the canyon. We're not seeing vehicles get anywhere close anymore to where this chase has ended. But I want to touch on something you just mentioned that we talked about a few minutes ago. One issue for these officers are those blacked out windows on this Toyota Tacoma. We saw that the back window on the passenger side was shattered. We don't know what caused that, but still we see blacked out windows likely on both sides of this vehicle, making it very difficult for those officers to see what this driver's doing, to see how they're acting, if they're responding.
All right, folks, you've been watching live here on Live Impact News, some images from the sky over the Hollywood Hills area where there is a standoff underway. As you've been watching some of our affiliate reporting, this is a situation that started, we're seeing, as a hit and run, according to police. And there were various attempts to get to this truck to stop. As you can see now, it is stopped in essentially someone's driveway. It's kind of plowed partially through some of their landscaping in this property. But we're told by police that this was a Toyota Tacoma, that they got to run over 2 spike strips first. They attempted 2 pit maneuvers. Then there was a 3rd pit maneuver that ended up with basically the scene that we see here, that vehicle in someone's property, and there's the standoff underway. We're told that the driver got out of the pickup truck briefly, stepped back inside, and closed the door. We're going to continue to monitor this so you can see bottom right corner of the screen. We've put that aerial view up for you to watch, and we will keep an eye on things here. Meantime, we wanted to bring in a little bit more expert insight on this situation, and also coincidentally, we just happen to have a big update on an investigative piece to share for you today. So we have our investigative reporter Nate Morabito joining us this afternoon here on Live Impact News. So Nate, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to mind when, all of us were sitting here watching these images, the first thing I thought was all of the reporting that you've done on police chases and just some of the research that's been done into how to make these perhaps safer sort of encounters.
I mean, look, it's always a balancing act in these situations. What is the risk to the public if you don't stop this person? And what is the risk to the public if you go through the busy streets and try to get them that way? And in 2023, we had done some previous reporting on this, and the federal government had put together a report that really suggested limiting police chases. Really, there should be a violent crime, that's number one, and number two, they should be at risk of committing another violent crime. So that's the suggestion from the federal government, which was really, it was a study done by a lot of police and law enforcement agencies who were involved in this process. And you really are trying to figure out, are those two criteria met? Now, you tell me this was a hit and run.
That's what the initial reporting is saying here.
We don't know how severe the hit and run was. I mean, it's so tricky to sit here right now and say, was this the right thing or wrong thing to do? But what we found is, number one, the number of innocent bystanders killed in police pursuits is ridiculous. It's absurd. It's unnecessary. Many of these pursuits are unnecessary. I'm not saying this one is unnecessary because we don't know all the details. But generally, police will say, look, in the moment, we have a very difficult decision to make. And if there's a violent person, we need to arrest them. But then there's new technology now where you can, in some places, including in our area, shoot a little, almost like a little tracker on a car, and then basically you'll know where they are for the rest of the day. And also, you have an expert at University of South Carolina who has told us, good police work will find these people. Right? Especially if you're pursuing someone and you want to stop at some point, you see a license plate maybe you get an idea of a person in the front seat. Good police work would eventually track this down. We did this story here in Charlotte. It was really centered around a terrible crash here in Charlotte where a new father was going to meet his baby at the hospital. Police were trying to arrest somebody coming the opposite way. That person crossed into oncoming traffic, crashed, killed the driver of the car which the man was in. Mm-hmm. He has life-changing injuries still today. And we're very close to getting that body camera video, actually. We had went before a judge to argue for the release of the body camera, which you have to do in North Carolina. The judge said he would grant that request after the criminal case was over. It's over. So now CMPD is in the process of producing that video. But there's a lawsuit in that case, and the argument was, it was clear early on, they should have stopped pursuing this person. They didn't, and one person's dead, another person has critical injuries because of it. And that's the fear you have in these situations. Again, if you're a police officer, it's a balancing act, and I have high respect for them. It's a very difficult decision to make with adrenaline pumping, a split-second decision. What is the right thing to do for the public? And we have found too often innocent people die as a result. People who have nothing to do, they're just minding their own business. That should not happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up, the perspective. Yeah, this is a difficult job to do. And I think some of the, reasons I appreciate your reporting is the fact that you're looking at research, because I think the ultimate goal for everyone involved, all the stakeholders here, is just to make sure that we get to a more safe scenario for everyone. I don't think, by and large, officers are looking to hurt other people, right? They're out there for public safety, and if there's a way that we can get to the bottom of how to do a job safer, I mean, and research can inform that, certainly that would be something to consider, I think.
Right. I mean, you're instead of the first decision to be, let's go pursue this person, think for a second. Does this person need to be arrested right now? That's really what the guidance is saying. That's what the research is saying. Has this person committed such a bad crime that they are a threat to the public right now? Are they at risk of committing another severe crime that puts the public puts the public at risk and in danger. And I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago after our story aired, the next day, CMPD was involved with this pursuit that lasted hours, and people were outraged. It wasn't even really a pursuit, honestly. It was just they were kind of tracking this car, and eventually they kind of let them keep driving throughout the city, and they never really supposedly turned the lights on to chase them. They had a helicopter in the sky. And, I mean, you're never going to win when you have the public sitting there scrutinize everything you do. But it's a good thing that we do it, because if we don't do it, more people continue to die. And, you know, there was a case in Belmont many years ago where two people just, it's just so unnecessary. That's what the research shows. Oftentimes, it just doesn't make sense. And let's also be real here. There are people who have personal responsibility that are driving these cars that are getting pursued by police that could stop all this too. So you just pull over for a police officer, but for some people it's not that simple. And that's what also the experts say. I mean, particularly if you're a black man, this University of South Carolina researcher told us, the instinct may not be to just pull over. It could be triggered by police pursuing them. And then you wonder, well, what else do they have on me? What are they trying to get out of me? I mean, it's a very complicated situation that I am not in a position, based on my upbringing, to say I would react the same way, because everybody's different, and there is history here involving police in a segment of our population that's very difficult to overcome. And so at the end of the day, this was maybe the most important thing this expert told me. There has to be an adult in the room, and the police officer has to be that adult. They have to make the best decision that protects the public as a whole.
Yeah. Quickly, before we pivot to our original topic we were set to talk about, which of course is a big development in an ongoing investigation you've been doing, how can folks find your body of reporting? Because you've done a lot of pieces on police pursuits.
Yeah, I mean, so number one, we called this one In Pursuit. You can find it on WCNC.com, on YouTube. It's there still today. And I will tell you, all of our investigations, there's a tab on WCNC Plus. You can watch our investigations that air, including the one that will air tonight at 11, which we're going to talk about in a second. But they're all there for you to see. And we did maybe 6, 7, 8 stories on this topic. Really big picture look at the situation, because it's easy to pick one case and say, this is why it's a problem. When you have, and I think it was more than 4,000 people, innocent people, and many of their pictures on the screen who had nothing to do with any police activity that day, then dying, that should make people rethink, okay, we need to take a hard look. And I was so grateful that the federal government put out a report acknowledging this, that we need to limit these things. Because what we try to do is we report on things that we believe are common sense and that are backed by research, by data. So it's not just like Nate saying we need to stop this. This is a body of work that's suggesting this is not safe for the general public.
Yeah. Really interesting, and of course looking forward to any potential updates you get in that series. Speaking of updates, we kind of teased this a bit for folks. You're actually here to talk about an update in your investigation into what's going on at Somerset Court in Cherryville. And for folks who are kind of just catching up on this situation, there are multiple stories that you've been telling here, but you have some updates on some of these cases, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Somerset Court of Cherryville is an assisted living facility in Gaston County. Dozens of people live there. And late last year, we became aware of some concerns there. And it started out with us interviewing a woman named Stacy Reeves. I'm going to let you hear from her in a second. She was fired by Somerset Court of Cherryville, but had some legitimate concerns. Number one, she shared a picture of a hospice patient on a mattress on the floor, was made to sleep on the floor because he was a fall risk. She raised concerns about the call bell system there. We found out about a woman who died after choking, who another resident told us the call bell system was down that week when this woman needed help. She had to run to the front to get help. She later died. We also discovered through our reporting another woman who was the resident counsel who had to go to the hospital for something. Somerset Court of Cherryville refused to take her back. Her family says she's outspoken, she's an advocate. They believe it was retaliatory. She had filed formal complaints against Somerset Court. Her name was Frida Reynolds. And because of that, she was stuck in the hospital for 53 days. She was easily able to get discharged much sooner. The doctor signed off on it. The facility wouldn't take her back. And this woman, her mental health declining, Can you imagine not having a home to go back to? You've made friends there. You have people that you love that are dying there. You can't be with them because you're stuck in a hospital room. And I'm going to tell you the big update in a second, because this facility is now in trouble with the state because of much of what we reported. But here's how it started with a woman named Stacey Reeves bringing concerns to us. I'm also curious, like, what do you want to come out of this? Just awareness?
Awareness, and I want them people to get the treatment they deserve. I do. They're treated bad.
That's
and
really
I
what
miss
you want.
them.
That's what you want.
I loved going to work there. I never called out, ever. Never called out of work, except the day my mom was in the hospital. And I even felt bad that I couldn't be there for them. I just want them taken care of. And how they're being treated is not right.
Well, the state is now verifying that, at least in Frida Reynolds' case, the woman that was stuck in the hospital, they have investigated after our reporting and found that she was neglected by this facility. She was not given the proper discharge paperwork. She was not given the right to appeal. And the state will recommend a fine. State law suggests it could be anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000 for this facility. A separate investigation found that the call bell system, 3 months after Linda J., the woman who died after choking, passed away, the call bell system was down for a week straight in January. And again, this is not what the rules and laws allow. You have, if you're going to be taking care of people, vulnerable people, you have got to be making sure that if there's an emergency, they have their call bell. That's what the state rules say. It's not what I say. That's the rule. You have to make sure you're following the process so that people have a right to appeal if they're getting kicked out of the facility. And in this case, the state has said this facility acted wrong in these situations, and now they're in the process of issuing the fine for the neglect. The facility will have a chance to kind of mitigate that. The facility basically said in its response that the call bells were back up and working. But remember, we had documented a history of these call bells not working, and also that they were going to send the proper paperwork for this woman's discharge, but an emergency came up. They never got around to it, and by the time they were reminded they needed to do it, they thought too much time had passed. It wouldn't have made a difference. And thankfully, this woman, Frida, is now in a new place, hopefully doing better, but it's an adjustment. You know, when you move to a new place, especially when you're by yourself, it's isolating, and it's farther away from her family. So a big development here. We're going to have our story tonight at 11.
Okay.
It's going to recap everything again and talk about exactly what the state found. We have state records that show all this. And that's just something else I want to point out. You know, after a story airs, I'm constantly filing public records requests to try to see, okay, when's this investigation going to be over? What's releasable? And I got a few pages of documents that are just like completely redacted. There's nothing. You can't see anything in it. But then I've got some other ones that list exactly what the state found. And that's just, to me, is the most important thing. We're not just presenting problems, we're following them through to see, number one, if people are held accountable and if the processes are working the way they're supposed to. For assisted living facilities and nursing homes, there's a process. If you have a problem, you can report them to the state. There can be a complete investigation. Will that actually work? That's what we wanted to know. It did work in this case because they verified some of the concerns.
Wow. I guess for folks who are watching this and they're going, man, I have a situation, I think I need help. What would you recommend to folks who think that maybe they've reached an impasse through official channels and they're thinking of, maybe I need to go a different route to get some results?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I always say good faith, try to follow the proper process first. You know, escalate your concerns, whether it's with a business, whether it's an organization, whether it's with a school system. Reach out to your elected leaders if they could be involved and maybe can potentially help you. They can be advocates. The Attorney General's office can advocate for consumers. But if all else fails, that's what we're here for. Particularly issues that shed light on a bigger, broader problem, right? That's not just a one-off. Now, we can help with one-off situations, and we try to when we can. But if there's a bigger issue that you think the public needs to know about, you can reach out to me directly, nmorabito@wcnc.com. I'm all over social media. You can find me anywhere there, too, so that we can look into it, read every email, try to reach out to every person who reaches out directly to me as well. And I think we have a track record of really exposing things that no one else has done around here. And without brave people coming forward, sometimes in their darkest moments, we would never be able to tell these stories. And who knows what changes would be taking place right now at this assisted living facility if that fired employee, number one, hadn't come forward. And all the other people, both publicly and privately, I've talked to about this, there's a lot of them. It's thanks to them for being brave enough to speak up that we can hold this facility into account, and the state, who's in charge of oversight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up that point about folks being brave, because we understand that's really tough to go out there and tell your story. And sometimes these are really tough situations, vulnerable situations. And we don't take telling these stories lightly. We want to make sure that, you know, justice is done, whichever way that is or whatever that means. And, you know, it's just, I'm grateful too, you know, when I see your pieces and I see the people who come forward as well, and they're sharing what they see as an injustice, and then you take it to the proper channels, and then inevitably we get some results.
And it's never just somebody saying something and us putting it on TV.
Right.
We don't do it that way. That's not how we're going to do it. We're going to be meticulous, we're going to be right, and we're going to do it in a way to make sure that the impact is what the impact should be. And I'm working on another story right now involving a school system, and I had that conversation with the parent I'm talking to. This is going to take a while for me to do this, and for our photographer to do it with me, and for our executive producer to go through this and make the right decisions. But we're doing this because we're not just trying to have a sensational story out there. We are actually trying to do a story that will make a difference in our community, and that takes time, and thankfully we're given the time to do it and the resources to do it, because I think it makes all the difference. You know, if we were not given this time to do this kind of work, what's happening at Somerset Court of Cherville would not be happening right now. Yeah. That took a long time to put that together.
Yeah.
But look at the end result because of it. I mean, it just goes to show what we're trying to do here and what we have been doing here as a TV station and as journalists. It does make a difference when it's done the right way, and in a way that's transparent with the public, that continues to let them know, like, you can trust us here. We're going to be very cautious and careful and do right by your story. That goes a long way, because not everyone in this world are doing it that way. They don't all have the time to do it that way. So I'm just thankful that we're able to, and we'll have another update tonight at 11.
Wonderful. All right. Nate, thank you so much for stopping by Live Impact News, and thanks for what you're doing here too as well.
Thanks for the platform.
All right. Folks, thanks for sticking with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC+. We want to turn back now to a big scene that we've been following out of California. This is a standoff scene that we're seeing in Hollywood Hills, and it looks like we still got the aerial images showing kind of just the same place where we left things, unfortunately, with the standoff. Nothing resolved at this point. Quick backstory. Initial reports that this started as reports of a hit-and-run driver who crashed into a fire hydrant. There were some tactics to try to get this truck to stop, including 2 spike strips and 3 attempts at a pit maneuver. The third pit maneuver putting the truck, as we see it now, essentially in someone's front driveway, in their front hedges. So the driver, we're told by police, came out of the truck briefly and then went back inside. So that's where we sit at this point with the standoff underway, and you can kind of see the patrol cars butted up against the back of the truck, presumably not to let it go anywhere if the driver wants to try to leave, but they've got things monitored at this point. Carlene, do we have audio from our affiliate there? We do. Okay, let's go ahead and send you now there in full to that audio and that coverage in Hollywood Hills, California.
Obviously, you wouldn't, expect this, and she's at home on a Friday morning, and this all unfolding right in her driveway. So she was obviously just extremely, worried, and again, that was Cheryl Ling, the woman who lives in this home where this pursuit came to an end here this morning in the Hollywood Hills.
Well, we have 90 seconds left, or just about. Let's get back up to Julia Dang overhead in News Chopper 4. Julia, we know you've had another chance to listen to the scanner. We did learn that the hit and run actually involved a fire hydrant there at Hollywood and Vine, and that's likely what caused the damage to the front of the pickup truck that you pointed out earlier. Have you learned anything in the last minute or two about, the strategy here for officers?
No additional chatter, Jonathan, on the scanner, but I do want to point out the change in posture here. It looked for a moment right before you tossed to me like officers had their guns drawn again, but you can see they're moving now, and they're not dispersing. I think they might be getting ready to do what Odie just described. Perhaps they're going to fire a pepper ball into the truck now. We're on the driver's side now, and we can see the windows here are not shattered, but you recall on the other side of the truck, the back passenger side window was broken earlier. So still no movement from the driver, just waiting to see what she decides to do. Back to you.
Julia, thank you. Our 11 a.m. newscast is about to come to an end, but we are going to continue to follow the very latest on this chase, streaming on our NBCLA news channel and our website, NBCLA.com. You can also download the NBCLA app. Here on NBC4 California Live is coming up next.
Okay. All right, folks, you were watching there some of the coverage from Hollywood Hills, California. Looks like there could be some development, which the chopper there, of course, probably wanted to hold back on showing, just because we don't know exactly how the situation will resolve. But we do want to let you know we've got the feed in the background here on Live Impact News. We're watching it on a different monitor, if you will, so that we can just make sure everything is okay as far as how this gets resolved, and make sure that we're not showing anything that's going to be, disturbing or disrespectful. So this is, once again, a situation that started as a hit and run. According to police, somebody hit a fire hydrant, is what we're hearing initially, as far as those reports. This is a Toyota Tacoma truck that continued to travel low speeds, officers following it behind, and then inevitably they tried to deploy some tactics to get the vehicle to stop. 2 spike strips. There were 2 attempts at a pit maneuver, which were unsuccessful. There was a 3rd attempt, which finally pushed the vehicle into someone's hedges. And then the driver has essentially, minus 1 quick leaving of the car and then back in, has essentially been inside the truck as far as we've been monitoring the situation. We kind of heard some of reporting from our affiliate there that there might, be an attempt to shoot a pepper ball, is what they called it, into the car, to maybe try to get the person to disperse peacefully. But we just don't know for sure, and we don't want to show anything that's going to be disturbing in case that is not the chain of action that's going to happen here. So with that, let's go ahead and turn now to a story for us today that we're keeping an eye on. Hopefully everything holds out with the weather. I know we've been watching some gloomy skies here in the Carolinas. We've got a live look for you there at the ballpark in Gastonia, where the Ghost Peppers are going to be kicking off the season in just a little bit. So we do wish that they would have a wonderful start to the season and not have any issues with the rain.
Have you been to that ballpark?
So, interestingly, I've been to the ballpark, Carlene, not for a Ghost Peppers game, but, for a couple years we were, heavily involved with, Dîner Blanc, which is a big, it's hard to describe in a nutshell, but it's a wonderful celebration of community, and I emceed the year that they had it at that ballpark, which was kind of, it was special to have a nice outdoor setting, and it kind of turned into a nice party in a in a ballpark, if you will. But I've been there. Have you been to a game?
I have. I went when it was the former name of the Honey Hunters. I went. My cousin actually plays for the Somerset Patriots, so I went and saw him play.
Oh,
there
really?
against the Honey Hunters. And it was like a really cute ballpark. It's just nice. It's like, it feels so intimate. I feel like it's the wrong word, but it's so
you're right.
close, and it's, it's charming. It's very charming. That's the right word.
I mean, I will say that you know this about me and my family. We're big baseball fans.
Sure are. That's what I was like. I assume that you've probably been there.
Yeah, and I mean, primarily, sorry not to talk too much about our backstory, but we love the Tampa Bay Rays, and I'll just leave it at that. But we like to go to different ballparks to not only see the Rays play, and also, we'll follow the minor league team, which is the Durham Bulls. And obviously the Bulls come here to Charlotte and they play the Knights. And I do love going to a Knights game too. That's a great backdrop. But I think there's a lot to be enjoyed by some of these smaller ballparks. I've been to Kannapolis.
Yeah.
We've been to
we saw the
Kannapolis.
bananas.
We saw the Savannah Bananas there. And so, yeah, I love the intimacy of some of these smaller ballparks. And I think they have a lot of free roam to kind of have fun,
They also
extra
like
stuff.
the
if you will.
promotions don't take themselves too seriously. They're always fun.
Yeah.
Like, I do enjoy going to a minor league game. I came up with the Charleston River Dogs, who had plenty of like silly promotions. So I do love that.
Now I'm trying to go through my mind here. River Dogs, they changed their affiliation, right?
Yes,
Because when
they
you were following them,
when I was young, they were Yankees.
That's
And so
right.
Now they are, I think,
Oop, someone's out there's got to know. I'm blanking on it, but
the Rays.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I think it's the Rays.
There's a reason why they're in my mind.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's because
on your
they
radar.
recently switched to the Rays
Yeah.
affiliation. But yeah. It's just so fun. They do
fun.
great promotions and fun activities. But nevertheless, live images here from Gastonia. Some clouds in the sky. Carlene, it looks like we've got a bit of a weather update that we can give folks. Okay.
We got Brittany.
Fabulous. Brittany Van Voorhees, folks, giving us an update on what to expect this weekend.
Happy Friday. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees here with WCNC Charlotte. A cloudy day for the majority of the afternoon here, but sunshine will eventually mix in for a few of us. It is going to be similar to yesterday, warm, muggy with the off and on shower and storm potential. Thankfully, the flooding risk trimmed back for only the mountains and foothills, and I think this is just because of the pockets of heavy rain they had yesterday. Still overall, not a significant risk here, but just be mindful if you see additional shower activity for those spots, especially west of 77 and north of the I-40 corridor. As we approach the afternoon, again, sunshine is going to mix in. When I say afternoon here, closer to 4 or 5 o'clock, we'll see the sun mixing in, becoming mostly cloudy, and this is where we'll see a secondary round of showers and thunderstorms move in for those same areas in the mountains and foothills. In the Charlotte area and most of the Piedmont, actually the best chance for rain and storms probably between about 10 p.m. and about 4 a.m. as that's when we're going to finally see some of that more scattered rain and storm activity move in. That doesn't mean we don't keep in that small limited 20% chance of rain in for most of Friday, but this is going to again be that best opportunity. 10 and 4 is my thought so far as we've progressed throughout the mornings and early afternoon here. So the timing has been pretty consistent. 9 a.m. Tomorrow morning, by 10 a.m. we're looking at sunshine mixing in. The one secondary thing we'll have to watch on Saturday after some of that morning shower activity is this secondary line of potential spotty storms around 2 and 4 p.m. So this could impact tailgating for Charlotte FC, but I do anticipate most of this will be out of here by the time the match kicks off at 7:30. The reason why we'll have to watch 2 to 4 though is because of course not only are folks going to be out and about tailgating, but that's actually when the cold front starts to roll through. So as that cold front pushes in too, there will also be that potential for some increasing winds. So make sure you got something holding down the napkins at the tailgate and make sure those don't fly away. Tomorrow again, 80s, warm and muggy with that small chance of rain and storms. But once the cold front rolls in, I wouldn't say Saturday is a bad day by any stretch of the imagination, but Sunday, I mean, a big chef's kiss. We're looking at morning lows in the mid 50s, daytime highs in the mid 70s. Not only that, but the dew point is going to be much lower as we mix in some of that drier air. So right now we're looking at a limited potential for rain and storms Friday during the day, Friday night into Saturday morning. That's your best opportunity. Then we're dry for multiple days before we slowly increase those rain chances by the end of the 7-day forecast. As we look past 7 days, pretty typical weather looks to be the case. Warm, chances for rain, but of course that is still way out of here. Here's the atmospheric moisture showing that strong cold front coming in on Saturday. This is where we get that drier air. Typically during the winter months, we're all seeing that brown coloring. We start to creep back into some of the blues and light greens this time of year, which would qualify as muggy for April standards. But by summertime, anytime we see the pink, that's when we're going to be desperately sweating. And that's when we start to see dew points more so in the muggy category, which is mostly 70s. Today we're in the 60s, which is still humid again for this time of year. By summertime, we'll be wishing we were here. Perfect weather again Sunday, Monday with again not only clearer skies, but drier air being the dominant factor. Warmth though sticks around. I actually think Sunday will probably be the only day that we're at or below average for this time of year, as the warm weather is still going to be the dominating force. Now with wish pollen season was over already. Unfortunately, it's not. But with some of this rain this week, lower levels expected for Friday and Saturday. We'll probably see these increase a bit heading into the early part of next week. But the worst tree pollen season is past us. We start to see grass pollen entering into late spring, early summer, then weed pollen by the end of summer and early fall. Here's your Guy Roofing 7-day forecast. Scattered showers and storms tomorrow. Another chance for early Saturday especially, and then much drier, much better weather on the way for Sunday and Monday. Have a great day and have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks so much to Brittany for sharing that outlook for us on the weather front. We want to turn now to a briefing that is happening as we speak in Milwaukee. Here on Live Impact News, we want to bring you now to Executive of the County, Milwaukee County, David Crowley, who's giving a statement regarding the arrest of a judge. Quick backstory, a county judge in Milwaukee has been arrested by the FBI, accused of obstructing the detention of an undocumented immigrant who was wanted by federal authorities. Let's listen in now.
Shown up and arrested what they call illegal immigrants. Now we're seeing the arrest of a circuit court judge. What was your initial reaction to hearing this news this morning?
Well, hearing the news, I was quite frankly, I was surprised. You know, when we talk about our judges who are here to uphold the law, you know, it's really about making sure we give people that due process. And so first and foremost, I seen the tweet from Director Patel before I heard anything about the charges, which was very concerning. But at the end of the day, folks need to realize that our county courthouse, all of our public hallways are public. This is a public entity. And so when it comes down to the courtrooms themselves, that is up to what the judges are going to do. And so we, again, are going to continue to work with the Sheriff's Office, our Chief Judge, to figure out how we continue to move forward. But at the end of the day, we need this to be a safe space. And even if you are an undocumented immigrant, we need you to be able to understand that this is a safe space for us. They may be a witness in a crime. They may be a victim in a crime. And if they're a witness, for example, we need them to be able to come into this building and feel safe, to be able to talk, to actually be a witness. And so it does concern me. It absolutely concerns me.
Mr. County Executive, where this happened and how it happened, where in the building did this happen? Did you see any video of it or anything?
I have not. I don't have all the details related to where the arrest happened and how it happened, but we're looking to get that information.
You called it performative, so what are you basing you call the arrest performative?
There was a large presence of law enforcement officers that were here. That's the reason why I said it was performative.
In the first Trump administration, the states of Massachusetts and New York successfully pursued injunctions prohibiting ICE officials from accessing state courthouses, so as to protect their state court process and create the safe space that you referenced, Mr. County Executive. Are you, as the county executive, considering any affirmative legal action against the Trump administration to enjoin ICE officials from pursuing immigration arrests in the courthouse?
Again, we're having a lot of conversations with many of our partners. I don't want to put too much information out there, but we're looking at every avenue that we can as it relates to protecting people's due process in this building.
Have you been made aware of any other cases or examples of judges being arrested by federal agents?
I am not aware of any cases of that matter.
Then why do you think they picked Milwaukee?
I do not know. Again, you've seen many of these attacks on many judges across this country. Anytime they have went up against any policy decision that this administration has put forth. Again, we need our judicial officers to have their independence, and that's what we need to make sure that we are protecting. But I have, again, don't know of any other cases where the Trump administration has arrested a judge.
How could this have been handled differently? You criticized the tweet and you criticized the arrest. How do you think it could have been handled differently?
I'm not law enforcement, right? And so when I think about how this could have been handled, one, we're talking about a sitting judge who uphold the laws and interpret our laws. But for her, for example, to come to the courthouse and be arrested, why didn't this happen at her home? There are a lot of questions that we have as well, and we're looking to get some answers.
The criminal complaint states that Judge Dugan took federal agents into Chief Ashley's office, left them there, went into a separate room, went back and got the person who was supposed to be allegedly undocumented, escorted that person out of the courthouse, and then that person got away. Eventually he was arrested. But what is your reaction to learning that that is how federal agents are describing what happened that day and are alleging that that's why she's being charged today?
This is the first time that I'm hearing exactly what had happened, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're following all of our laws right here in Milwaukee County. And we are extensions of the state, and we're going to uphold the state and the federal Constitution. But we, again, want to get those facts as much as possible. So I can't speak to the details because I want to hear exactly what had happened. I appreciate your reporting, but I'm just not going to speak to that.
Under what conditions would Judge Dugan be able to resume her job as judge? Like, what would have to happen for that?
That's a great question. I think that's a question for the Chief Judge. I think that it may be a possibility of them reassigning many of her court cases, but I think that you should ask the Chief Judge that particular question. I have not heard anything as of this moment.
Can you just give us the few details you do know about her arrest? Was it in the cafeteria or somewhere else in the courthouse? What time did it happen?
I just know that it happened on our county courthouse complex early this morning. Those are pretty much the only details that I have at this time.
Or outside, do you know?
I don't know as of right now.
Any indications from the Evers administration, the Chief Judge, or the Supreme Court as to whether or not Judge Dugan will continue to draw a salary while she defends herself against these charges?
I have not had any conversations at this moment with the Supreme Court or anybody at the state level, so I don't know.
All right, was the sheriff's office involved?
I don't know. We're still getting as many questions answered as possible at this moment. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there we have, wrapping up there, a statement from the county executive of Milwaukee County. That was Executive David Crowley regarding the arrest of Judge Hannah Dugan, which we all kind of just learned about this afternoon. He alluded to this in that update, the fact that he found out about this situation, he says, because of a tweet from FBI Director Kash Patel. We should note that tweet has since been deleted off of X. That post was made there on the platform X. Bit of a backstory once again with this case. This was an arrest of a county judge. She is accused of obstructing federal authorities' attempts to arrest an undocumented immigrant who was seemingly at the courthouse for proceedings. And specifically, the accusations are that this judge escorted the man and his legal defense through a non-public jury door. So essentially out of the purview and the reach of federal authorities who were there to arrest him. And it is important to note, we heard the county executive talking about how he couldn't think of any other case where we've seen this before. However, NBC News is actually reporting that there was a case back in 2019 that was pretty similar. This was actually under President Trump's first term, where the U.S. attorney in Boston ended up charging not only a judge but also a court officer with obstruction of justice. For a similar situation, they were accused of aiding an undocumented immigrant who was leaving the courthouse through a back exit. And ultimately, it looks like that case ended up getting dismissed in federal appeals. Well, it went through federal appeals court. They were trying to get it dismissed. That was denied, but then the prosecutors ended up reaching a deal to drop those charges. So it essentially went nowhere once the transition administrations happened to President Biden's then administration. So certainly a situation we'll continue to keep an eye on. And as we get more feeds here on Live Impact News, we will bring those to you. Meantime, we wanted to talk about something that's very important to us, to our community, we know to law enforcement in the area. And that is an important milestone that is coming up this Tuesday. And so we just wanted to give you a heads up that we were planning some special coverage here on Tuesday, which is marking 1 year, if you can believe this, since the officer ambush that happened in East Charlotte. And I know that is such a memorable day for so many folks in our community. So we wanted to make sure that we honor the lives lost, make sure that we talk about what happened, how this has changed us, what questions do we still have, a year later at this point, and what's being done to make sure that, our community does not have to go through something like this again. So right here on WCNC Plus, as you tune in as you usually do to stream our evening newscast, we want to let you know that in our 5:30 half hour, we will solely dedicate that to this officer ambush look back and reflection. So please, if you haven't already, share it with your friends. Let folks know that we plan to, really do this important day in our community's history justice, and we want to make sure that everyone tunes in and give us feedback too on what you have as far as reflections of that day, because I know so many people remember that, and really just a heartbreaking date in our community's history. If I know, obviously, if you're streaming us now, you know where to find us, but let your friends know. WCNC Plus, have them add it to their Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, and on that note, speaking of upcoming events, we just wanted to let you know as well, we will have special coverage of Pope Francis's funeral. And so we have live images actually right now from Vatican City, specifically that's St. Peter's Square, where, obviously it's 6 hours ahead there, so it's dark and it's quiet, but, they're approaching probably around 9 o'clock in the evening. But we've been seeing over the last several days steady streams of folks coming in to pay their last respects to Pope Francis, who has been lying in state for the last 3 days. We know this morning President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump left to fly over to Vatican City so that they can, as so many dignitaries are from around the world, come and pay their respects to Pope Francis for his funeral tomorrow. And on that note, we did want to let you know here on WCNC Plus, we know it is early in the morning, but once again, we mentioned the time difference. They're 6 hours ahead in Vatican City. So 4 in the morning, if you're up that early, or this is a special, remembrance that you want to partake in, set your alarm and stream us. Here on WCNC Plus, we will be streaming coverage of Pope Francis's funeral, and really just will be kind of, the final goodbye that the world will be saying to the late pontiff who passed away earlier this week. No doubt we'll be covering as well all of the processes that follow. We've kind of previewed for you and detailed some of the things that you can expect from conclave and how the College of Cardinals will get together to select the next pope, and really some of the significance of that selection. We talked about how Pope Francis is largely remembered as being a progressive pope, relatively speaking. And so the selection of the next pope, depending on his views, would that take the Catholic Church more in that progressive direction, or would it take it more towards, the conservative lean, which Pope Francis kind of took the church, steps away from. So we'll be watching that. Meantime, we want to get to a new live feed that's just coming into our Live Impact.
It might be a playback, so I just want to.
Okay.
But this is from today.
Okay. So this is coming into our newsroom of this tour of the detention center, the ICE detention center in Miami by a congresswoman there. And we're told that this is her update after going there. And just a quick backstory, we've been seeing various lawmakers now that we are seeing nationwide efforts to detain more undocumented immigrants. These Congress people now trying to visit these ICE detention facilities to see what the conditions look like. So here's Frederica Wilson out of Florida.
Vatican Media English Channel. 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 Vatican Media English Channel.
Okay, sorry folks, we apologize for that. It does look like there were some issues with that feed that we had. So we want to talk about, well, it's not even done really. This is still underway. The draft continues.
We got Jeb here.
Yeah.
Are you excited for
Jeb
round
is
2
excited
and 3?
to start talking.
He's
early.
probably just like relaxed and ease that round 1's done.
Jeb, our producer,
we're thrilled it's over. Round 1's done.
Fabulous. A little backstory, Jeb Goldman here, who usually takes over in the producer's chair at 3 o'clock, was heavily involved with our NFL draft special last night, and hopefully folks tuned in and watched. I watched. We were watching at home. It was fun, and so And we saw your face, too.
Yes, no, I got to be opposite Nick Carboni, who did a fantastic job. I mean, really, really comprehensive coverage of what Panthers fans can expect from their first pick. T-Mac McMillan was very, very fun. It was really, really awesome to be a part of. And I'll tell you what, Panthers fans, I hope you're excited because this is going to be a really interesting era kicking off next season.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm excited. I think I've explained this to y'all. I'm kind of a weird NFL fan in that I've lived in so many different
You've been bouncing
cities
around for a while now.
that I kind of pick up fandoms. And in certain sports, like I kind of keep my original affiliations, but I have interest in Panthers. I have interest in Falcons, which is kind of, kind of timely considering what we saw, some of the draft action yesterday. The Falcons, did they clean house? I don't know. Can I say that?
I'd say if you're a Falcons fan, you're pretty happy with how yesterday
I think so. Yeah, they went to town. And yes, I'm also interested in the Bucks because I did live in Tampa for a while. So
they also, man, they
You go with the flow.
Yep. So I'm happy in the sense that I think I have a lot lot of interesting things to watch.
I was saying, I think you scored a hat trick as far as what you have to be looking forward to
now
next
we're
year.
mixing our sports metaphors.
Yep.
The hat trick. Nevertheless, yeah, the big word on the street and the chatter today is about Ted McMillan, who likes to be called T-Mac, and he made that clear in his media briefing, which was so fun. I loved watching that. And then, of course, we've got more draft coming tonight because we got round 2 and 3, and then we got Saturday, even more action. I think in the afternoon is when that starts.
Wrapping this up.
Yeah, so we're not done. But nevertheless, we wanted to, as Jeb pointed out, kind of remark and look back on some of the reactions to this first pick here. And so we have Nick Carboni, our sports director, and we have Julian Council with Locked On, and they're kind of discussing their thoughts. And yeah, listen in, folks. See if you agree.
But now I want to turn to the guy who kind of tipped off the pick to me when he screamed from our conference room. When that happened, I pretty much knew it was Tator McMillan because it sounded like you were surprised, Julian, or it was enough of a stunning moment for people to probably do that all across the Carolinas tonight.
Yeah, I know we talked about earlier what we were expecting from this draft, and I thought they were going to go defense, whether it was going to be an edge rusher or a defensive tackle at 8, and obviously Jacksonville really shocked everybody. But I'm surprised by this pick. I did not expect Tator McMillan to be the pick for Carolina here at 8. I had thought, again, edge rusher was probably what they should have been going after. And I also thought they were trying to trade back. And that was pretty clear because we had seen a lot of these picks, they were coming in pretty quickly. And then we had that little pause of, all right, what's Carolina trying to do? Adam Schefter's reporting that they're having phone calls. Then Ashton Jeanty goes off the board. And Albert Breer is talking about how that's going to impact their ability to get out of the 8 pick. So it did feel like at the end that they were stuck. And they decided the guy that they wanted was a big-bodied receiver to help out their quarterback who turned it around in the final 9 weeks of the season. So I don't think you can be, if you're a Panther fan, I don't know if you can be upset about the fact that they want to invest in Bryce Young in what is going to be a critical year 3 for him this fall.
Let me hit you with this piece of business. Colston Loveland just went to the Bears. He goes off the board before Ty Warren.
Okay. So we do get a tight end who goes in the top 10.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so do you feel like this was the situation Dan Morgan indicated could happen?
Yeah.
And maybe he would have liked that word stuck back, but it feels like that's what happened.
Yeah, I wonder if they just didn't like the proposals they were getting because Kelvin Banks Jr. went 9th overall right behind him to New Orleans, and he's going to be probably a long-term franchise left tackle, right tackle, whatever they're going to have him play there in NOLA. So I thought that would be an opportunity for them going into this draft. I talked about it on my show this morning that I looked at 2 entities to be holding the keys for Carolina potentially trading out of the 8th pick. I thought it was the Jacksonville Jaguars at 5 and then Ashton Jeanty. And immediately we saw Jacksonville trade up to number 2 to take Travis Hunter, so they impacted it there. And then at 5, we saw the Browns who moved back there. They did not. They ended up taking Mason Graham, who could have been a player that Carolina could have taken potentially at 8. But then we saw right behind him the Raiders take Jeanty. So both of those are off the board, and that would have impacted Carolina's ability. Because if Jeanty falls all the way back to 8, I then think there's a team that's desperate enough to get up there. I do wonder, like Houston, that's a team that reportedly is looking for tackles. tackles, they're drafting 25th overall. I didn't think Dan Morgan wanted to go back any further than maybe 13 or 14. Certainly not 25. So that may have been a team that wanted to get up there. Denver's a team that apparently is making calls. They're sitting at 28th overall. Again, they were below that threshold I thought that Carolina likely didn't want to go to. So I don't think it's not a due diligence in the moment of trying to get out of it. They just kind of were stuck to the point where it didn't make sense for them to where they probably would have been drafting later on in the first round to get out of that pick and not get the caliber of player that they were hoping to get. And I guess that caliber of player is clearly a Tetairoa McMillan.
I loved mock drafts until this very minute. And I feel like every mock draft that I read or watched was just like, Jalen Walker. And like didn't consider other very realistic possibilities that could happen to the Carolina Panthers, one of which, and I'm still a little bit surprised it happened because of the defensive need and because of the need for an earlier second-round pick, that this is what happened. But just take out the draft and everything that goes into that and all those layers. Tetairoa McMillan on the field with Bryce Young next year, what is kind of the expectation 20 minutes after finding out it would happen?
Well, I would think that it's going to be Tet McMillan, Adam Thielen, and Xavier Legette as the three that are going to be starting now. That's a big loss for Jalen Coker today as far as looking at this upcoming season. Maybe in 26 he can regain his starting spot. We'll see how it plays out, but you now have a red zone threat, and I thought that JT Sanders was becoming that until he injured his neck in that game against Kansas City in the first half and then was never the same to close out the season. Now you have that, a guy who aced contested catches. And you look at Travis Hunter, who went second overall. Go back, watch the film when Arizona went up against Colorado the last couple of years, and Tet McMillan was able to get his own in that game as well against one of the top corner, in my opinion, in this draft, and probably also the top wide receiver when you look at the combination of talent that Hunter has. So I think McMillan's going to come in, and he's going to be that red zone threat, but we'll have to see whether he can separate. That's going to be the big question mark. I had wondered if Carolina would try to get a wide receiver one. I didn't see anyone in free agency who was available. And quite honestly, in this draft, looking at McMillan, who I thought was the best receiver, but then the draft cycle went on, and I think that kind of poisoned the well as far as how fans may have viewed him and viewing him right now at this point in time. Matthew Golden was a name. I thought maybe speed would have made more sense if they're going to go receiver and maybe get a Golden, but they got a guy who they think can maybe be that number one, but they already said Xavier Legette's going to be that. So are they going to have two? Two's better than none, so we'll certainly take that.
We'll see what the competition holds. Yeah. I mean, for Dan Morgan, a linebacker at heart still, to grit his teeth through those 17 games last year, watch that defense, and then go get a second straight first-round receiver. I'm not going to say that was hard for him to do because I think he truly likes the player.
Look at it this way, though, because they invested heavily defensively in March. They went out there, they got Bobby Brown III to be a run stopper. They brought in Turk Warden to be an interior rush defender. They're going to look at Derek Brown as a free agency addition after not having him for 16 games last year. They brought in Pat Jones. Like, you look at it, they have Jadeveon Clowney coming back as a starting edge. They have DJ Wooning coming back as a starting edge. DJ Johnson, maybe there's something there. Jero Vera really liked him. So they have edge rushers that the staff likes, at least offensive staff. They really like those guys. So it's not necessarily that they had to get an edge rusher. I just look at the group and see no one who's a true difference maker at this point in time in their careers. And that's why I thought it would have made a lot of sense to go out there and do it. But if you look at just how maybe a Jero Vera is going to see it, he already has three veterans in Jones, Woonem, and Clowney who he can deploy there. They already have veterans on the defensive line at defensive tackle, so it's not like they needed to have a Mason Graham to come in and play immediately. Linebacker, they're pretty set there. Corner, they have their two guys, and let's not forget they do like Shamar Bartholomew and a Caleb Evans.
Yep.
Evans, who started Week 18 game against Atlanta before getting injured. Safety, that's the spot where they need to get another starter. But like, they're not taking a safety at 8. Like, had they taken Nick Eamon-Ward, that would have been truly surprising. You could have understood it. So if you just look at it, like, they already kind of have their starters. And whoever's going to go at 8 probably wasn't going to be a starter right away unless it was a safety. So I can understand this where, Tet McMillan clearly is going to come in and be a starter. Like Jalen Coker, as much as people and fans appreciate him, what he did last year was really good. He was undrafted. He was cut originally by this team. If you can make your team better, which is what they probably believe they're doing right now, why not do that instead of worrying about the undrafted free agent receiver from a year ago from Holy Cross?
What does this tell you, if anything, about how the Panthers feel about Legette?
I don't think think it says they don't like him.
No.
I think it says they just want to add more to that room, and they're looking towards the future. They have to imagine that this is going to be the last year for Adam Thielen, whether it's in Carolina or in the league period. I probably think he's going to retire after this season. David Moore, who's their fourth receiver, he's probably not going to be back next year if I had to guess. So you needed to add another piece, and were you really going to completely depend upon your first-round pick from a year ago? And again, while having a really nice rookie season, I think a guy who can be a piece of the future in Jalen Coker, a former undrafted free agent at that spot. So it does make sense just looking ahead. And I was wondering, coming into this, what would be the surprise pick? Because last year, I don't think we expected a running back to go off the board in the second round for Carolina and Jonathan Brooks. I don't think we expected them to take Trevin Wallace, a linebacker. And here we are yet again where Dan Morgan and Dave Canales are surprising all of us by taking a position that you would not have seen as like a priority position of need. Maybe tomorrow night would have been totally fine if they would have gotten a speedy kind of slot receiver. I would have understood that. I can understand this because you're investing in your quarterback, and Dan Morgan did say at the Combine back in February, while defense is a priority, they're not going to neglect the offense. And, well, this is exactly doing that. You're not neglecting the offense. You're investing in your quarterback, and I mean, that's a good thing. We'll just see whether it works out. They made the right pick.
All right, so moving forward, the Panthers are talking at the podium right now, so that's a sign they are done for the evening. So you're off
I see Dan
you're off the hook with that. We'll hear from them shortly. So now we turn to day 2 for the Carolina Panthers. Now, they didn't trade back tonight and get a pick earlier than 57, but that doesn't mean they can't do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I would love to see if they can move up earlier on the draft board there tomorrow night. And, I mean, edge would be what I'm looking at. This has been considered a deep edge class. And if that is the case, then there probably shouldn't be a ton of consternation over them not taking an edge rusher tonight. And looking at it, I mean, Michael Williams just goes off the board. I think other than Abdul Carter, he's the second one to go off so far. Jalen Walker still sitting there. So Walker's not going to be available night 2. But there could be guys that they do like there on the second night. So I think that they should try to take. I also think safety, that makes a lot of sense, as well as, again, right now it's Trevon Merrick. It's potentially Demani Richardson. They need to add another true caliber starting safety in there. So I would think those would be the 2 spots certainly that they're really looking for. And other than, like, maybe they could do tight end, but I would think right now, edge rusher, I feel like they need to add there, and safety, that is probably the glaring need at this point in time, just looking at things as they stand right now.
All right, Julian Council from Locked On Panthers. Man, I appreciate you sticking around tonight. What a night it has been. And you've already appeared on the Locked On NFL scouting show, or live
I will
show?
be going on
You will
soon.
be on soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will release you and let you get to that.
And
So-
I'll be live on YouTube tonight on the Locked On Panthers
so
YouTube channel.
plenty of reaction, and I assume tomorrow as well.
And tomorrow night.
Okay.
Going to be up for a wedding, but I'm going to stay sober. It's a welcome party, so I won't have too many drinks. We'll be live again tomorrow night too.
Locked On Panthers, Julian Council, thanks for joining us.
Well, and just like that, we're going to bring in the man himself, sports director Nick Carboni, because we've got even more to talk about, coming off of the actual pick itself. Now we have the introductions, right? We get to meet T-Mac, if you will.
Yeah, and this started with the Panthers drafting Bryce Young a couple of years ago. They brought him in the next day and had a big to-do with fans and banging the keep pounding drum, and ownership was there. So they did that with Tatora McMillan today, and we did find out, we did get official clarification. He doesn't want to be called Tet. He doesn't really want to be called by his first name fully, Tatora. He does want to be called T-Mac,
Okay, good.
and that is a capital
Phew.
T, no hyphen, no space, then capital M, then lowercase AC. So
Okay.
today at the news conference, he was addressed as T-Mac. So, but he was a great interview today.
Fabulous. I mean, I watched, obviously, when we had our draft special on last night, his first media offering where he did the Zoom. And I just got so much great personality from him. I love, he talked about the lay and his culture.
Yes,
and yeah, that was great.
He gave one to Coach Dave Canales today, who gave him one back. So when you see T-Mac's sound bites on our news and our streaming today and tonight, that lay that he's wearing is actually from head coach Dave Canales, which I thought was a nice gesture.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that kind of caught my interest when hearing him speak, and I don't know if he was able to elaborate it on, on some more, but we heard him talking about Bryce.
Yeah, so
last night.
They're both Southern California kids. They went to high schools not far from each other. There's a bit of an age difference, obviously, but this entire lead up to the draft, everybody thought the Panthers were going defense. Everybody thought they were taking Jalen Walker from Salisbury. So the Panthers played this really close to the vest, and T-Mac revealed to us last night that he and Bryce actually worked out and threw the ball together a couple of weeks ago. So these guys have a connection. Bryce absolutely gave his opinion and, his kind of, reference, I guess, if you will, to the Panthers decision makers. I think they liked him anyway, but that was helpful, and they have a connection. Bryce came and greeted him today on the field as he got there.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting dynamic to learn about, kind of the backstory there. And I mean, you talked about this, at length, leading up to the draft itself, how everyone did think that it was going to go defense. And I mean, I saw all the mock drafts too, and what they were saying. So I guess as far as like bigger picture, as someone who has now followed Panthers moves now for a while, including recent weeks. I mean, if you look at the offseason moves that they made too, I mean, what are you looking at now, and what do you think about the bigger picture now of what we're seeing, both now on offense and defense, including not only this pick that they made, but the moves that were made in the offseason?
Well, in free agency, they spent just about every dime except for running back Rico Dowdle on the defense. And I don't think by any means they're done there. I mean, general manager Dan Morgan is a former Pro Bowl linebacker for the Panthers. He had to be gritting his teeth last year watching that defense be historically bad for 17 games. So I think they will address defense in a big way. They still have 8 picks as it stands right now in this draft. I think they will move up tonight earlier in the second round because there's a collection of edge rushers, safeties, corners, and linebackers, some of which could have very well been first-round picks that are still sitting there. So I'm not sure they're going to wait 25 picks until tonight. So defense was clearly the issue with the team last year, but it wasn't like the receiver room was as refined as they wanted to be as well. Now, they've struck out in the last handful of years on receiver picks. Jury is still out on Xavier Legette, who they picked in the first round last year. I don't think they wanted to be in a position, Vanessa, to pick another first-round receiver this year, but Legette didn't show them enough to show that he is the number 1 receiver for a long time. He can still be good. And also, at number 8, didn't really love the defensive guys they saw, because it's all about value, where you're picking somebody. They may have loved Jalen Walker later, but not at number 8. At number 8, they went with a very gifted athlete who can make a difference on the offensive side of the ball and help Bryce Young, because ultimately, if Bryce Young doesn't go, this team, this franchise doesn't go, and head coach, GM, maybe they go. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I guess that is kind of, when we think about, maybe largely we are surprised by this pick in this direction, but I think ultimately what it says about is just putting the pieces around Bryce to make sure that there is more success, which I guess could only be a good thing, right? I mean, we want this to work. We need this to work.
Yeah, and it's an offensive league. The Panthers have an offensive-minded head coach. He cares about the defense, certainly, but Dave Canales, you have to give him a lot of credit for Bryce's turnaround last year and just the way he handled that entire situation. I mean, he's been around, he looks young, but he's been around the league for almost 20 years working under Pete Carroll, who is a master of dealing with just individual people. The players are people too, and how to deal with that. So, I think he's very excited to work with a receiver of this caliber and fold him into the offense that really started to kind of click at the end of last season.
Now, you mentioned Legette a few moments ago. Obviously, there's a dialogue that's happening now about, what the dynamic now looks like with all the pieces of the puzzle and where do people fit now. So, I mean, do you have any takes on that? What do you think about the chatter that we're hearing?
I mean, the best case scenario for the Panthers is that Legette starts on one side and McMillan starts on the other side. I mean, they're both big-bodied athletic receivers who can go up and get the ball even if they're well covered. They're both supposed to be excellent at contested catches. We saw a lot of that from Legette in college, didn't see it last year. And I think one of the things with Legette last year was that I think he got a little down on himself because he cares. I think when he had drops, when he had injuries, when it wasn't going well, he was unable to bounce back as quickly as possible. And the other thing that went against him, some of his drops were in such big moments. They were tough catches. Think about the one at Philadelphia. But they were in such big moments that they are so glaring and so noticeable. And then your coach is like, you got to make that catch in this league. But I do think there's still space for him. Best case scenario is that they're both out there. They're both making big plays at the same time for Bryce Young. So it by no means is it, I don't know if they ever expected Lee Gett to be like an all-pro receiver, but they moved up into the first round because they really liked him and what he can do. I think I think T-Mac is somebody that they view as somebody that can be one of the best receivers in the league someday.
Yeah. Well, you alluded to this, the fact that there's still some decisions to be made. We've got, a couple more rounds to get through. So I guess thoughts on where we go from here.
Yeah, it's funny because so last year was general manager Dan Morgan's first draft as the general manager, and he traded, I think, around every single pick that he had. So I think that was part of the other surprise last night. Like we called him Trader Dan last year. We are just used to him trading, but I think we're going to see a little Trader Dan tonight. So they've got 57 in the second round. They've got a handful of third and fourth round picks, and fifth, fourth and fifth especially. So they couldn't undercut 57 last night by trading back and picking up somebody's second rounder, but now you can work your way up with some of the picks they have in the next couple days. So I am pretty sure, and by the way, I will be coming in here immediately on WCNC. I'm 10 feet away. As soon as the Panthers make a pick, we're going to break it down in here on WCNC Plus, and I have a feeling I will be coming here a little bit closer to 7 o'clock than they're scheduled to pick right now.
Yeah. Well, you've roped yourself in on this. You've made the ultimate commitment, saying it on streaming.
Well, I mean, it was so cool because, and Jeb was in here with me last night, and it was like, the Panthers pick 8th, but everything that happens between really 2 and 7 is going to affect what happens to them. And that's exactly what played out from the jump when we had that kind of like league-shattering trade between the Browns and Jaguars. So, that's the fun part of the draft is because, and the fun part of what we can do on WCNC Plus is we're watching it just like everybody else. And now we're trying to figure out how it's specific to the Panthers. That's not something they're necessarily doing on the network broadcasts, how everything pertains to the Panthers, but that's what we're doing.
Well, and it kind of speaks to and maybe softens some of the rhetoric we hear in the media availability with, like, for example, Dan Morgan, who's like, oh, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do the other. And I guess you're like, I guess you could, depending on what happens.
He's very good at saying a lot and saying nothing at all, but you have to read between the lines a little bit. The one thing I knew they weren't going to, I would have been more shocked if they traded up for like a Travis Hunter than I was shocked that they got a wide receiver, but I was still pretty surprised.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nick, thanks so much. I know it's been a long day, question mark.
It's the
I know you got up
draft.
early. You were on Live Impact News at 8 o'clock this morning.
Listen, Jeb and I watched the draft anyway. We're just happy to do it. We're happy to do it here too.
I know. Well, it was a lot of fun to watch. Thanks for doing that. And obviously you included so many other perspectives as well.
Having the Jalen Walker party live, even though he wasn't able to go to the Panthers, and he speaks today in Flowery Branch, Georgia, as does Charlotte native James Pierce, who they also picked in the first round.
Yes.
I'm excited to see what those guys have to say about playing the Panthers in the division, because both guys, you could argue, were passed up by Carolina.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was watching when y'all had the first, commentary from the family and from Walker himself, and he said, rise up.
Yeah, he said, we thought it was going to keep pounding, but it's rise up now.
All right, Nick, thank you so much.
You got it, Vanessa.
We'll
Thank
see you in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, thanks for sticking with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Obviously, we are keeping track of a lot of major headlines. We wanted to keep you updated on some developments out of Hollywood Hills because we're seeing the scene developing now. And I don't want to say it's escalating. I just want to say that more equipment, police are bringing in more equipment, it appears, since the last time we checked in on the scene. Quick background here. This was is rather still a standoff involving that gray car that you now see pinned between two police vehicles on the side and one heavy-duty police vehicle on the back end. We're told this started as a hit-and-run driver who crashed into a fire hydrant around 9 o'clock in the morning. This is local time, so that's West Coast time, just keep in mind. And police say that they were following this truck at low speeds through the area, eventually took various maneuvers to try to get it to stop. There were 2 spike strips deployed. They had 2 pit maneuvers that didn't work and then a third one that did, pushing this vehicle into the driveway, into the hedges of this property, as we can see there. And when we were last checking in, so for some perspective on how the scene has developed over the last several minutes at this point, last time we saw it, there were lots of regular patrol cars that were kind of stationed around the vehicle. There were officers standing behind their doors. We heard our affiliate there who was reporting from the air, these aerial images coming to our affiliate there in Los Angeles, reporting that it looked like they had weapons drawn. We weren't sure if those were weapons, their actual service weapons, or if there were, guns that were used, that they were going to try to use to launch pepper balls, because we heard them talking about that. They might try to shoot a pepper ball into the truck to try to get the person to come out. But now it looks like they've brought in heavier duty police equipment and vehicles to respond to this. And I know, Jeb, you've been listening to the feed. Are they in continuous coverage, or is this the aerial, just no audio?
We've been hearing on and off from their helicopter reporter, but so far it doesn't sound like they are in actual coverage, but I am monitoring the scene and the audio to see what they're saying. But so far, we have not heard from that live reporter in at least a couple of minutes as they're trying to gather new details.
Okay. So as far as, we're concerned, folks, everything is kind of the same as it was, with the addition of now you can see the new tactics here. So we're still waiting more official word from authorities on maybe what might come next. How long could this last? Are they negotiating? Are they, you can see, okay, for example, here, this police officer, he just threw a pole across the driveway quickly to his counterpart on the other side. Are they using, I don't know if there's a mirror on the end. Sometimes I feel like I see that type of equipment if they look around corners. I'm not sure if that's what that is, but what sort of tactics are they doing to try to get this to come to a peaceful end?
It's super interesting. That honestly looks like what that might. I mean, what else could that possibly be? The guy right there. It is very interesting how they have upgraded this from, we saw typical police cruisers before to now we have these armored vehicles. I'd have no idea why or what constituted that level of escalation, but I mean, this looks like a full-blown military presence now.
Yeah, I mean, we see like this heavy-duty truck. I don't want to call it a SWAT truck. I'm assuming that they probably have, SWAT ties here, or even at the very least some SWAT officers. But they have like a hatch up the top that you can see. There's an officer that's poking out through the hatch, with that hatch door almost being used as a guard. And we don't know anything about the driver, in the sense that, is this person armed? Obviously, if they don't know, they're going to try to treat things carefully until they know for sure, maybe, hey, this person isn't armed. But this is obviously a situation where they feel like they need to take certain tactical steps to try to make this resolve in the best way possible with all the equipment that they need to make it resolve safely. So we're going to watch this in the background. As soon as we get any new development, any new movement, any updates from authorities or affiliate out there, we'll bring you back. Meantime, we want to come back to the Carolinas because we do have a big story that a lot of folks are talking about right now. We're seeing a lot of chatter online. I'm getting messages from people who I have contacts with in the community regarding, animal welfare. But there's this video that has been circulating now, and it shows essentially a possum being burned to death. And it's really sparking a lot of outrage from folks in the community, and we've learned after doing some digging that authorities are aware of this now, and they're starting to get involved in potentially an investigation, potentially some charges. So we want to bring in our Miles Harris, who is working on this story for us today. So Miles, thanks for joining us here in the Live Impact News studio.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. Obviously, a very, very concerning incident that we were talking about with the story today, and obviously this has been something that we've been kind of following up with ever since we caught wind of this story or video on Facebook from a couple of days ago, or from earlier, I think this morning and last night.
Last night, yeah.
But we have been able to at least talk to a couple of officials. We do know, like you said, that there are multiple agencies looking at this incident, looking at this video, trying to kind of piece some things together. As far as the details in regards to officials and investigators from there, we just know that they are looking at this case. They are looking at this being possible felony charges or an incident in this because of the animal cruelty in regards to this. You really can't own possums in North Carolina and in Charlotte specifically. So this definitely looks like an animal cruelty case, a felony animal cruelty case that the investigators are looking at. And we also got a chance to really hear from some wildlife experts as well, and kind of diving into just kind of more of the specifics and the importance of this incident and a reminder from an education standpoint on really how to handle wildlife, whether we see them in our backyard or in our front yard or in our neighborhood, and really just the benefits of having, whether they're possums or any other types of forms of wildlife as well. And so hearing from that perspective, I kind of learned a little bit about that as well. And so we had some fun. We actually got to see some possums as well, and kind of learning really what the benefits are of them being in our community. But really just a disturbing case, I really just have to say from that, because I mean, even from the moment that we had saw the video, I didn't get a chance to watch the video in its entirety, but just a really disturbing incident, really.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to point out that I think our staff was kind of split in a way, because, you know, in some ways we do have to watch the video to make sure that we know what we're seeing, and because we brought this to authorities, and we went to police, and specifically the Animal Care Bureau with CMPD, and you spoke with wildlife officials, and we even reached out to the FBI. But I think our staff was split in the sense of people who were like, okay, I need to watch this for the work, for the job, and some of us, including, I have to admit myself, who knew I couldn't watch this video because it would probably just bother me too much to see it. But yeah, it's interesting to see kind of the different potential, you know, legal ramifications, legal, implications of the situation. I know that we reached out to FBI separately, and we received a response back with a spokesperson who was saying that they were looking into it. So we don't know for sure that FBI is going to take a role in this, but we know that it was posted online. And once something's posted online, it's potentially considering crossing state lines in some cases, and there are laws against this, specifically animal torture laws. And we talked about it earlier on the stream. There's a 2010 law that specifically forbids posting of videos of animal torture, including burning videos, that Congress passed because it's such an issue.
Which this could, again, like you said, fall in line with that incident. And so, in doing one of these stories, and I think one of the benefits of doing a story like this is learning about possums, learning about wildlife in this sense, though, too. I didn't know about the benefits in that regard, though, either. And I think that's the important part of what we're doing in highlighting this incident as a way of how do we not necessarily avoid breaking laws, but what are the benefits of having wildlife in our community, right? And whether they're possums or any other forms of wildlife, just knowing what they do, and really, again, ways of handling it. Okay, like let's say I see a possum in my backyard. I don't want it. What are the ways of avoiding it or having it leave my backyard or whatever the case may be? There are ways of doing it, and obviously this is not a way of doing such. And so learning about that, putting it out to our viewers to understand that and learn that part of well is definitely a thing that we're kind of focusing on with this story, but definitely just a concerning case, and obviously something that we don't see very often, unfortunately, though, either. So
yeah, you mentioned the education element for possums. I mean, I learned in part through the group that you spoke with today, so I'm looking forward to hearing more from them. But, the fact that some people, they might see possums as pests, but in a lot of ways they're actually pest control. So I don't know if she did. Morgan talked about that.
Yeah,
but,
like I didn't know that they help when you're dealing with ticks or copperheads and things like that. I didn't know. We actually got to hold some possums today, and so didn't get a chance to really know that, and I didn't know that beforehand. So knowing and learning that the benefits and knowing that they are serving a really good purpose for our community and helping, whether they're neighborhoods or wherever they are, I mean, it's kind of one of those situations that's best to kind of avoid if need be. But then again, if you don't know, how do you go through the proper channels in addressing a possum or any type of form of wildlife? And so getting a chance to learn that, getting a chance to share that with our viewers and our community is definitely a big plus for us, but also kind of getting the answers as far as who is responsible for this incident, knowing what they could be facing when it comes to charges and stuff like that as well, if that's being looked at from whatever level of agencies that we're talking to. Just knowing that stuff and learning more about that is definitely one of the things that we're kind of focusing on with this.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for looking into this for us. When can folks see your piece here on WCNC Plus?
Yeah, we got like an hour and a half, so we're live at 5 and at 6.
Okay,
so we're going to have a lot of that. So.
Okay. So folks, tune in. Once again, keep it here on WCNC Plus throughout the evening. We'll have the very latest on that. And we appreciate you, Miles, for taking the time to stop by the studio. I know you're putting your piece together. It's in progress, so I know that takes some time, so thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, folks. We continue to monitor several developing situations here in the Live Impact News Studio. So with that, we do want to bring you back to Hollywood Hills, California, where the standoff remains underway in this, what we're told started as a hit-and-run situation, developed into a police pursuit, and then, as we can see, has now developed into a standoff with that driver, we're told, still inside the gray pickup truck. I know we're zooming in here, so you can probably get a better look now. So the truck in question is the silver truck that is pinned in on all sides by police vehicles. And we're told that at one point, after police deployed the stop sticks and the pit maneuvers, that the person did briefly get out of the pickup truck, and then we're told that they stepped back inside and they closed the door. Now, I don't know if anything was said or if there was any sort of indication that the person was not going to comply and be arrested, or we just don't know if the person indicated that. But regardless, we've been seeing this very heavy police presence in response to that situation. And it's developed, as we pointed out several moments ago, where we've seen, to start off, several normal patrol cars, as the ones that you might picture, the sedans that are black and white with the sirens on top, and they had several of those there on the scene with police kind of using their doors as shields, standing behind their doors. We saw some police with guns drawn, and now we've seen it to the point where it looks like potentially this is SWAT who is now on scene, and they've got this armored truck, and they're kind of also using this as a shield, and even one of the officers who's poking out through the top hatch of that armored truck, using that door, that hatch, as a shield. So we're still unsure, how this is going to develop, whether they're going to continue to try to, we're guessing maybe negotiate. We haven't really seen a lot of physical activity happening, as far as trying to attempt to go into the truck and get the person out. So we're not sure if they'll continue to maybe try to talk to the person, try to get them to come out on their own accord, or if eventually we'll start to see some actions taken to forcibly remove the person from the vehicle. But if you're just joining us here on Live Impact News here as we approach the bottom of the hour here, this is a scene that started around 9:30 local time, so catching you up to speed. So local time, West Coast time. It was near Hollywood Boulevard, Vine Street, we're told. There was a hit-and-run driver, we're told, crashed into a fire hydrant. And then so officers started chasing this pickup truck afterwards. We're told that the speed was not very high on this chase, so, this isn't like a high speed police pursuit. It sounded like they were, driving behind this vehicle at low speed. And then eventually they decided that they were going to try to get the vehicle to just come to a stop. They placed 2 spike strips on Mulholland Drive, and they essentially got that truck to run over the spike strips. Then the police say that they tried to use 2 pit maneuvers, because the vehicle obviously at that point had damaged tires, and the truck just kept going. And so eventually they got to this house in Sherman Oaks. This is Coldwater Canyon, if you're familiar at all with the area. So this is Coldwater Canyon and Clawson Place. This is where eventually the pickup kind of started to slow down as it approached the driveway where we're in now. There was a third maneuver, and the pickup stopped there, and they're kind of, you can see, in someone's driveway. They're kind of in someone's hedges as well. And then that's when the standoff began. So that was roughly about an hour and a half, we're hearing, after this whole situation started with the hit and run, the alleged hit and run. We talked about that driver coming out. So the driver did come out of the pickup truck for a while, and then they went back in, they closed the door. We still are waiting to hear more about the driver. Who are they? Is there a general description of them? Do they know this person? Is this a person known to police? Did the person indicate that they were armed? We don't know the answers to any of those questions quite yet. I'm sure hopefully as soon as this does resolve, there are some updates from police so we can get some better perspective. But speaking of perspective, we've got the shot widening up now, courtesy of our affiliate out there in LA, and we can see not only do we have the SWAT presence immediately around the truck, but you also have, counted really quickly, but maybe at least half a dozen, if not more, patrol cars actually blocking the road itself. So that is definitely going to be another issue for folks in the area. The other thing that I'm just wondering is, does the person live at this home, or was the person happen to pass by this home and there's someone else who is in this house now who's just, probably, worried and just like, what's going on in my driveway? So that's another thing that I'm kind of curious about what's going on. So we'll keep an eye on this. We are going to, maybe, Jeb, if we can put it in a box for folks as we pivot to another big development. We've got actually just here into the Live Impact News studio a briefing that we're seeing coming up on our feeds. It looks like NTSB is reporting some updates regarding the death of a stunt pilot during a crash at Langley Air Force Base. This was ahead of an air show performance. And so I think if we have that, we'll go ahead and listen in full now, and we'll take you back to Hollywood Hills as soon as anything develops.
Of a pilot that admits fault. You know what, I forgot to put the landing gear down, my fault, the airplane is fine, and we will do an investigation, but it'll be a class 4, and we just take the general data, and it's a data gathering. And the next one is a little bit higher up, a class 3, which would be a limited investigation that there's a little bit more substantial damage to either the aircraft or serious injury to the pilot, where maybe the main structure, the main spars, something of the main components are damaged. A higher level class 3, which is a fatal accident like we have here today, we launch on those. We launch on every one of them. We always have an investigator on scene.
All right, apologies about that, folks. Looks like the feed is starting to freeze, but we can take you back to Hollywood Hills meantime while we work on getting things corrected with this NTSB update out of Virginia. Once again, we mentioned there was a stunt pilot who is a well-known stunt pilot, Rob Holland, who died when his plane crashed at Langley Air Force Base Thursday morning. So we'll work to get more on that shortly, but let's get back now to Hollywood Hills. The standoff is still underway in the Los Angeles area, and we still, looks like, are watching these SWAT officers, is what we're guessing, just based on some of their tactical gear and the equipment that they're using. Looks like they're still kind of broaching carefully the situation with the truck. Oh, they're actually sticking something into the truck. I don't know what that is. Oh, it's yeah, I was going to say either smoke or pepper bombs is what we heard affiliates kind of referring to the potential. Ooh.
Yeah, that's probably it for this guy.
Okay. So, all right. Bear with us, folks. Looks like we're starting to see some movement from the vehicle, and potentially maybe someone getting out of that passenger side door. And keep in mind, we'll just remind you, this is a raw, unedited feed. So we're going to do our best to make sure that, everything you're seeing is okay to see. But if anything starts to get too dicey, we'll probably dump back to this NTSB update, just because we don't know what's going to happen here.
Sounds like it's a woman.
Are you hearing?
Yeah.
Are they reporting?
Yeah, let's pull this up.
Truck, no
Okay.
passengers.
Looks like we get some audio from our feed, our affiliate there.
I'm going to widen out just a little bit here to get eyes on what these SWAT officers are doing. Okay, Mike, we gotta go? Yeah. Yeah. Hey, desk, we got to get out of here. We're pushing it with fuel.
All right, folks, so we just wanted to get you some quick updates here. Obviously, it looks like this shot is about to go away. From what we heard from the reporter in the helicopter
Those
there.
of you streaming with us, this has been going on for so long now. We are nearly out of fuel. We do have to go back and refuel at base, but it looks like this standoff following the hit-and-run pursuit is finally coming to an end.
Okay, so you heard it there. They're running into fuel issues, but nevertheless, things are starting to come to a conclusion there. If you just missed it a few moments ago here on Live Impact News, the standoff basically started to come to a close when police, they inserted, and I apologize, I don't know the technicals of all that this, the SWAT was using, but there was a big pole that they inserted through a broken back window of the truck, and it looked like they deployed something. And we were kind of guessing it might be pepper spray or, a pepper bomb or something similar to try to, smoke the person out or get them to, physically come out of the vehicle of their own accord by making it uncomfortable by remaining in the truck. So we kind of saw them right after that, we'll call it a pepper bomb potentially, was deployed. The passenger door opened, we saw an arm, and just the arm of the person, but kind of indicating that either they were going to come out of the truck or
Crackle, paraben free.
maybe they were, sorry.
Just shampoo it. Too obvious.
We need. Apologize. We were getting some residual audio from the feed that we were pulling, so we were sorry about that. Anyways, as we get more detail on how things wrap up, we'll definitely pass that along. So we've got for you a couple other feeds that we're following here on Live Impact News. Were we able to pull in the sentencing? Is that what, okay. So we'll go with that. We've got obviously big developments here with the former Rep. George Santos case, just getting the sentencing down here today. More than 7 years in prison is what we're hearing. And this was, the congressman who lied about the life story and defrauded donors. That's kind of the backstory to this case. But we've got an update from it looks like, I'm going to guess prosecutors, but I'm not positive. But we've generally got some reaction here to this kind of coming to a conclusion. So let's take you there now.
Can you hear it? No. I just delivered the victim's impact statement to the court detailing his crime against the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. He certified every week that he was unemployed through no fault of his own while he was collecting a $120,000 salary from a company in Florida. And this is not a victimless crime. This impacts the people standing to my right. This impacts people trying to get their benefits from the unemployment insurance offices. It impacts businesses who pay into the trust fund. And more than anything else, it tends to destroy the people's faith in government. We are, for him to then go on and become an elected representative and be a co-sponsor of a bill that would actually enhance the charges against people who commit this fraud is the height of hypocrisy. And, I take my service as a public servant incredibly seriously. My whole job is to ensure that the public is served the way that they deserve. And they do not deserve to be built by this kind of fraudster.
How important was it for you to speak today on behalf of the victims that were here?
It was terribly important. We were talking earlier, people think of this as a victimless crime because it's about money. There are many victims in this crime, as I said, and remember that every week he had to certify, I am unemployed through no fault of my own. So every week he lied to the state of New York.
How do you feel about the sentence?
I think it's appropriate. I think the judge did a terrific job. Judge Seibert was wonderful, and she heard all of the testimony, and she sentenced him appropriately. As they said, it wasn't just one crime, it was 5.
And you also asked for the maximum.
We did.
You listened to him today. What did you think of his reaction?
It's sad that he's in this situation, but it is a situation of his own making. And as I said, he made these decisions every week. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't an oops, it wasn't I don't know what I'm doing. It's very clear when you steal money from UI. And every week he lied to the state. And so I'm sorry for him, but every week he had a chance to change it and he didn't.
So you were speaking in behalf of taxpayers?
I am, absolutely.
Can you state your name one more time and spell it?
Roberta Reardon, RobertaReardon.
And what's your title, Ms. Reardon?
I'm the Commissioner of the New York State Department of Labor.
And you'll go big, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jody, meant a lot for us to hear you say what you said.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Jody Cass-Finkel. I'm the head of Concerned Citizens of New York 03. We're going to get started? Yeah. Okay. We actually said we were going to do a little press conference here with folks from the community who are going to talk a little bit about what happened today and what it means for our community. First of all, I want to say that, listening to George Santos, he blamed everybody else but himself, his mother, his father, being bullied as a child. He's still lying. My reaction in sitting in the courtroom was cry me a river when he got that sentence. He has betrayed the public trust. And people are asking, is this closure for us? I will say this is not closure for us. Why isn't it closure? Because we have many elected officials representing us who are still lying. And so we will get closure as soon as the lying stops. And we are not going to wait. We will not be deceived again. And we are here today to announce the launch of a new project called DeceivedNation.com. And in that project, we will be holding our elected officials and our candidates accountable for everything that they say they're going to do, and everything that they do. So let's talk about lying. We are sick and tired of the incessant lies. Lies erode trust, they result in corruption, and worse, they create a climate of deceit. People expect dishonesty at this point, and people don't believe anything. Is he here? Okay. It used to be when there was a lie and an elected official got caught in a lie, they were shamed and they would resign. But that's not what's going on anymore. Now, when they're caught in a lie, they double down and they say ever more extreme lies. So this is how we see it. Humans have changed the way that they communicate. And the typical place where people used to get their information has shifted. But the guardrails, the regulation that helps to protect the public have not yet put in place. And in the absence, the Republican Party has been taking advantage of that and blatantly lying. So we are fighting back against those lies. The Santos debacle forced us to organize. We got a head start. And we would not let Santos's lies be normalized. We cannot let these other liars also be normalized. Today, in the face of ever more electeds with outrageous lies, we are launching this Deceived Nation project. Is it okay to run on a platform of promises that you have no intention of keeping? Is it okay to say what you're going to do and then when you get elected, you change it and you do the opposite? What about not fixing the things that you say you're going to fix that cost your constituents money, and then taking donations from the people who make millions from an inefficient system? We created Deceived Nation to address, because we see the disinformation, we see the distortions, we see the distractions, and we see the outright lies. So, and if it goes unresponded, we know that if there's no pushback, it gets normalized. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We're going to hear from a few people around the district. Our first person we're going to hear from is Aiden Davis from Plainview. Aiden.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Aiden Davis. I'm 20 years old. I'm a student at Princeton University, and I'm from Plainview. When I first heard about George Santos's lies and fabrications, I knew it was my obligation as a young person to use my voice for one thing, to get him out of office. I joined Concerned Citizens of New York 03 in December of 2022, and since then I've been alongside these great people in the fight to get accountability for our district. As a young person, I know the corrosive effects of liars like Santos on the trust of my generation in our government and our politics. My generation grew up in a social media environment based on lies and deception. The incentives to lie online are so high because of engagement-based algorithms and institutions so distrusted that it's now almost impossible to know what's true anymore. So to see someone like George Santos so brazenly take advantage of this and our district to get elected is perhaps the grossest misuse of our information ecosystem that I can think of. It's not just that Santos's lies betrayed our district's trust. The lies he used to get elected, to boost himself and to take down his opponent, has emboldened deceitful politicians to further degrade our political dialogue and throw campaigns into the gutter. Over the course of the past 2 election cycles, we've seen brazen lies on nasty mailers targeting incumbents and candidates alike. What has this led to? A chilling effect on young people, women, and other vulnerable groups from running for office, for fear that they'd be easy targets for these low-blow falsehoods. We, as informed and responsible citizens, have to get the people to push back on the lies. That's why DeceiveNation.com was created, to push back on the lies from politicians and their henchmen and their PACs that flood our feeds every day. As citizens, we must demand honesty, integrity, and transparency from our elected officials. And when they don't live up to that, we must hold them accountable. And when they lie, instead of allowing them to double down on their lie, we must call them out. Call out their lie. We must show young people that honesty matters, that the system can work, that our values of honesty and integrity and transparency are to be rewarded, not denigrated. We refuse to be deceived again. It is incumbent on all of us, young and old, to take up this fight for a more trustworthy and representative government. Yes. For us, for your kids, and for future generations. Yeah. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear. Yep. We're going to hear from Sabina Margolis from Great Neck. Hang on. Okay, as soon as when he comes, we'll stop. Okay. And if, are we in the way here of the shot you're looking for?
No, I am. Don't worry about it.
We understand. We will do that. Okay, everybody, as soon as Santos comes out, get the cameras out, but then we'll go.
I'll make this quick.
We've been here a few times already with them, we know.
My name is Sabina Margolis, and I am part of the Deceive Nation project because our county is under threat. And it's not from the outsiders, it's from politicians gone rogue in our county. Such is the case for Bruce Blakeman and his really crazy idea of a militia. He's pushing this dangerous legal plan and is only accountable to him, and with what funds. It's not really, it's public funds. It's not something that we agree to. See, he calls it public safety, and let's be honest, it's public danger. It's a year later, and we still don't know who picks them, what training they'll get, what weapons they carry, what costs us, and who are they in the first place. And it's no surprise that many of the FOIL requests we've made have gone ignored. No answers, no plan, no interest in serving the community. This isn't safety, it's a power grab. With Santos, we started to observe how lying got out of hand. It was just continuous lying. But it doesn't stop there, as we were saying. That's why we launched Deceive Nation. We, the people, are now amplifiers. We are the resistance, and we are just getting started. By November 4th, every voter in Nassau County should know the truth. Blakeman, you're lying. We don't buy your distraction, we don't buy your distortion, we don't buy your disinformation. We demand disband the illegal militia. fix the broken property tax assessment system, protect our environment, revitalize our downtowns, lower our taxes. Our county executive doesn't need a militia. He needs a wake-up call, and we are it.
Yes, we are. Yay, Sabina! And Sabina is one of a small army of people who have created, all volunteers who created the DeceivedNation.com project. Emily from Plainview.
Yes.
Woo! Emily Raphael. Right?
Yes, we're Rayfield. Hi, I've been a member of Concerned Citizens of New York since January of 2023, and at that time, Santos was sort of a big, unfunny joke, and I hope he goes back into obscurity after all this. I'd imagine it's hard to film cameos from the pokey. But we have to think not about the specifics of his case, about the Botox and the Hermes scarves and the stolen money for a dying dog and on, but how important vigilance is. As nice as it is that a small group of people made enough of a fuss to help get this disgrace out of office, the work is hardly over. We need to keep working and keep an eye on the government. It's been very eye-opening to see just how easily people can get away with lies and distortions if no one questions and corrects them, and that's what Deceived Nation aims to do. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, Emily. Okay, now we're going to hear from Kim Kaiserman from Port Washington.
Jody. My name is Kim Kaiserman, and I'm a member of the good government group Concerned Citizens of New York 03. In December 2022, I was stunned to learn that my member of Congress had gotten elected by creating a false persona to trick people into voting for him. Pretty quickly, it became apparent that George Santos was a total fraud, whose lies were as brazen and offensive as they were numerous, and that he was not a person who would ever be able to represent my community. I was outraged. So I joined with a group of volunteers who became Concerned Citizens of New York 03, and we got to work on a grassroots campaign to force Santos's ouster from Congress. It seems incredible now, but in the early days, we actually thought our local Republican officials might join our effort, but they were completely uninterested. We thought the other members of Long Island's congressional delegation might speak up for us, but they gave us minimal lip service and then fell silent. And we thought our work would be done in a matter of weeks, but it took 11 months. For those 11 months, 770,000 Americans were deprived of the representation and advocacy that every single one of us should be able to expect in our representative democracy. Instead, we were treated to continued lies and ugly publicity stunts by George Santos and stonewalling by his Republican allies. The day in December 2023, when George Santos was expelled from Congress, was the day those 770,000 people finally got relief. And today, nearly 18 months later, is the day we finally get justice. Don't get me wrong, this is not a happy day. A man is going to prison, but it's an important and necessary day. It's also an appropriate day to reflect on the lessons of George Santos. How was an obvious con man nominated, elected, and allowed to stay in office for 11 months? Trying to find the answer has been like turning over a rock and finding a rotten culture of lying underneath. The truth is that George Santos emerged from the culture of lying. He was protected by it, and he leaves it with us even as he goes off to jail. He is just one example of the way lying is corroding our democracy. An extreme and over-the-top example, but one example nevertheless. When a win-at-all-costs mentality governs a political movement, lies become commonplace and accepted as normal. Here on Long Island, the Nassau County GOP is a flagrant purveyor of lies, nominating candidates who lie frequently, both on the campaign trail and in public office. I have firsthand experience with this. When I ran for state senate in the last cycle, I was targeted by a deluge of baseless claims and outlandish falsehoods. I saw with frustrating clarity the way disinformation is polluting our local politics. And I realized with great alarm that our local press is no longer fact-checking politicians with regularity. So while Santos's sentence may give 770,000 people a measure of closure or a measure of justice, it does not give us closure. What would give us closure? Not just a few years in prison, but the restoration of a few truths in our public life. First, character matters. Second, standards of ethics, honesty, and transparency must be bipartisan. Finally, accountability is integral to democracy. And with changes in our information ecosystem, we need new ways of holding liars accountable. So that brings me to the future of this wonderful group of truth tellers, concerned citizens of New York 03. At first, we thought our work would end when George Santos was expelled, but it quickly became clear that we had much more to do in this fight against the culture of lying. As a grassroots group, we came up with a grassroots solution, the Deceive Nation Project, which will foster a network of volunteers who are committed to pushing back against propaganda, disinformation, and fear-mongering. This network will use the emerging information ecosystem to differentiate truth from lies and bring transparency, honesty, integrity, and accountability to our political discourse. We're proud to introduce this project today. We invite you to look at our website, our social media, and we encourage you to join us in fighting the culture of lying and restoring truth to our public life. Thank you very much.
We're going to hear from one more person, very short, Vasu Krishnamurthy, and he is from Manhasset. So we have people all over New York 03.
Take a minute, 1 minute. Again? Come on, bud. Yeah, I know, again. Sorry, one mic. Best I can.
That won't be out of your way.
Sorry, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Vasu Krishnamurthy. I'm a resident of Manhasset, which is, as you know, part of New York District, Congressional District 3. It has been a long journey to see justice served to George Santos, but we are not relieved today. We're only comforted by it because Santos is an aberration. His buffoonery was so extreme that it could not be ignored or sane-washed. But we see all around us unprecedented damage done through lies, deceit, and misdirection by Trump and on down to his local cronies, Bruce Blakeman and Jen DeSena. Possibly. We're continuing, or? Yeah, there you go.
Hey, buddy.
Here's the.
All right, I guess we do have to follow. Sorry.
Is that him?
Yeah.
Okay, folks, so we're seeing some of the earlier reaction from folks to the sentencing today of former Republican Congressman George Santos of New York, pleaded guilty last summer to aggravated identity theft and federal wire fraud. And from what we're hearing by accounts in the courtroom, sobbed upon learning that sentencing and asked for mercy from the judge, to which the judge replied, quote, "Where is your remorse? Where do I see it? It's always someone else's fault." So he'll be spending more than 7 years in prison, and it looks as though at that point now, as we're seeing these images here, him leaving the courthouse after learning that fate. So we're getting closer here now to our switch over to the evening news at 4 o'clock. Keep in mind, we'll be watching various headlines for you today. We've got, of course, that horrific story of animal cruelty out of